think at this point I could safely say, and I'm open to negotiation, that it might not be the exact truth, but I might be the only Chicago radio on-air talent that is a veteran. And so you can imagine how much my back has gotten up with all this stuff around the VA. And today, I'm going to touch on that more than just a little bit. Excuse me. I just had, by the way, let's just get this clear right out of the gate. I'll basically work for food at this point in my career. I've been doing this 30 years. So when I get the opportunity to have Super Dog before I start radio, I am all in. Let's just call it what it is. So this afternoon, joining me about 2:30 will be Rhonda Britten. I want to give you an overview of what our afternoon's like. She is a PTSD expert and someone who is known around the world as an advocate for living fearlessly. And if there was ever a time that the fear factor is up, and I'm not talking about the old show with Joe Rogan, and how far has he come since he had fear factor? Something's not right somewhere. Anyway, she's going to be joining me at 2:30. We're going to talk about what happens with all this influx of information in so many ways we can't do a thing about except get you-know-what off. So we're going to, and I think of this, you know, I've dealt with PTSD from an automobile accident back in the 1980s. And I can tell you that it's something that lingers to this day. Matter of fact, pulling in here, coming off the main street to come into the parking lot, there was a woman driving who was not paying attention, and I caught her out of the corner of my left eye, out of my peripheral vision, and it set off all kind of bells and whistles for me, because that's what happened many years ago when I was in this automobile thing. And so it's still there. And so that's just an auto accident. This is not war, and it's definitely not conflict, and it's not a lot of things that people have gone through, but PTSD is a real thing, and we're all post-traumatic stress something at this point. You can't have the amount of media coming at us that we do in all the various forms that it does, right on your phone, in your hand. You find out everything instantly. This was not the case back in the day when there's only 4 channels on television. So Rhonda's going to be joining me at 2:30. We're going to talk about that and more. 3 o'clock, my old friend Tom Skilling, who you've watched for many years on WGN, a meteorologist. And this is a guy who spent 45 years, he doesn't look that old, 45 years on the television and radio, educating us about the climate. So I asked Tom to come on. He's retired from WGN now, does his own thing. But I asked Tom to come on and talk about the difference between climate and weather. There's a difference. In case you've forgotten 5th grade science, which I will be referring to many times today, about so much of what I learned about the planet, the earth, the ecosystem, the environment, I learned in Mr. Andler's 5th grade class at Belding Grammar School. I'm going to have to remember where my cough button is. Here it is. That's what happens when you suck down a Super Dog before you start radio, right, Bedelia? Bedelia's on the other side of the glass, helping me out today, so I appreciate that. So Tom's going to be on at 3 o'clock. We're going to talk about those things. And I always found it fascinating that people would tune into this guy by the millions over the many years he was on, and everything that came out of his mouth was taken verbatim. I mean, this is the man. But then when we start talking about climate change, people, oh, no, wait a minute, I don't want to talk about that. Well, we're going to talk about it at 3 o'clock with Tom Skilling. And then at 3:30, Gil Gross is going to be checking in. Now, you may know his name, and certainly you'll hear his voice from many years on the radio, CBS, among other places. He was the guy that was the fill-in for Paul Harvey Good Day. Remember those Paul Harvey spots back in the day? So Gil was the go-to guy, the pinch hitter for that. And he wrote a great little article a day or so ago on Facebook. There's very few things on Facebook that actually have value, but you got to dig through it. It's a landfill at this point. But he wrote a thing about how he and Paul Harvey were diametrically opposed and opposites politically, but they learned how to work together. What a concept! So he's a really articulate guy. Wrote that, and I asked him to join us this afternoon at 3:30. 4 o'clock, I'm going to roll back to the VA stuff because it deserves a double header. I was in touch with Senator Duckworth's office on and off for the last couple of days. Unfortunately, she couldn't join us because she's a little busy trying to get the veterans that were cut off reinstated. What a great idea she's got there. So I have her audio from CNN with Jake Tapper. We'll get to that a little bit later, and it's juxtaposition with a email that I got from the Veterans Administration, as a veteran myself, and many of you vets listening probably get this, and it had the current Veterans Administration Secretary with about a 5-minute, 6-minute video that I found really interesting. So we're going to play that audio a little bit later. In case you're not a veteran, this is the kind of stuff that we get in the email. And then at 4:30, my gal pal Jennifer Weigel is going to check in, because if I don't put her on the show when I'm here, I get yelled at, apparently, by people. So she's going to have her one-woman show coming up in April. We'll talk about that. And it's not all doom and gloom. It's not all, what to the wall. We're going to do a little bit of some of the lighter fare a little bit later on. But first, before I get to Rhonda here in a little bit, this veterans thing, here's how it sits for me before I dig into some of my notes. So a couple of weeks ago, and I go to the VA probably 4 or 5 times a year. I do a couple checkups. They've done some surgeries for me. Never had a bad day there. And I know a lot of the vets that I work with and the people I spend time with, they have the same experience. The Veterans Administration, I'm talking about the Hines VA now, over in Maywood is where I go. Shout out to Dr. Gutierrez. Great guy, except he went to the wrong high school in Chicago. I went to Schurz, he went to Lane. We shouldn't even be speaking to each other, but we find middle ground, if you get my drift. So Dr. Gutierrez is my primary, and he always tells me the same thing. You got to eat less, weigh less, do more. Okay, well, I've been hearing that for never mind how many years. And but I was talking with him, and then I was talking with my chiropractor about what's going on. So shout out to Dr. Roz, who's my chiropractor. And I want to make a point about this chiropractic thing. It has been such a benefit to me over the years for the various ailments that I've been dealing with, not just from my service time, which was from 1980 to 86, United States Coast Guard Aviation, Semper Par, but all the things since then. And their job is to take care of the men and women that have served to the best of their ability. So when I found out that they were adding chiropractic, probably 3 years ago, 2-3 years ago, I actually couldn't believe it. This all comes on the heels of President Biden expanding some of the services for the Veterans Administration. So imagine my surprise when I went in and I had the opportunity to have chiropractic and then alternate that with acupuncture. 2 things I had almost no familiarity with except the titles. And it's been amazing for me. Pain way down. Dr. Roz, turns me into a pretzel every time I go in there. And it's always an educational experience. I ask her, how many of these vets do you handle a day? 12, 5 days a week. It's a long day. And some of them, from what I understand, for reasons I'm not exactly sure, because of the size of the VA in Joliet, they drive all the way up from Joliet to see her. They come to the Hines to go see her because these services are not available in a place like Joliet. Now, if you're a veteran and you've been to the Joliet facility, I'd like to hear from you, because I don't know if they have chiropractic or not, but she does tell me that they do come up here and they do take the service up here. So I was talking with her about this, but right before I went in to see her, I had to call into the VA main line to confirm my appointment. They usually send, now the one thing they could do, but I get why they do it. They could cut back on the paper. Every time I have an appointment, I get a couple of letters in the mail, which is very nice, and they thank me for my service, but it's like kind of a waste of paper. But I also realize not every veteran is like me, which is computer savvy. So these guys and the women have to get something in the mail so they know what's going on. So I'm okay, I can live with that. But I called there, and for the first time in all the years that I have been using VA services, the recording came on and says, your wait times will be much longer than usual because of staffing shortages. The Veterans Administration. So just a few years ago, they were under the gun because they weren't providing enough services. Then they bring more people in, and the services were upgraded. And now they're getting rid of thousands of veterans, people that work at the Veterans Administration and veterans, which is 30% of the VA workforce, which is a lot of people. At the Hines VA, that I talked with some of my doctors. I'm not going to say which one who said exactly what, because it's not on them. It's not about them. It's about the numbers. Upwards of 1,000 employees of the Veterans Administration, the VA hospital in Hines, are going to be cut loose. They've already started the process. Out of that 1,000, if the numbers hold up and 30% are veterans, the answer is 300. So it's bad enough that 600 other people will lose their jobs, but there's 300 veterans, some who are disabled, are cut loose. And here's the other thing about this. And I'm sure Joan's covered it, and Tom Hartman's covered it, and Stephanie's covered it, but I'm covered it now from my perspective. They are let go without cause, or with cause, I should say. They cannot just go to unemployment. Somehow they've been getting these emails saying that your performance is subpar. There's no way in Hades and double hockey sticks that what's going on at the federal level could ever go in and determine these people, all of whom who have, top-rated performance reviews, are somehow now non-essential people. I'm telling you. So it's one thing when you see this stuff on the news, isn't it? You see it on the news. That's happening over there. It doesn't affect me. And now we're starting to see it's affecting real people. I kept thinking to myself, what are they going to do when they cut all these people loose? You're going to load up the unemployment rolls. No safety net. They're just cut loose, sent off into Valhalla. That's the end of that. So that's my first little rant here on this. We're going to continue with this for the rest of the day. But we come back. I want to put the number out. If you're a veteran, I just want to hear from you. If you've had any reduction of services, you have any thoughts on this. I don't want to hear from any keyboard cowboys. I want to hear from my veterans. That's who I want to hear from. 773-763-WCPT. That's 773-763-9278. If you're a vet, I want to hear from you. We'll be back with more on WCPT, where truth matters and the facts do as well, right after this.
The Big Picture with Edwin Eisendrath, Saturdays at 1 p.m.
People did work hard in this election. Millions of Americans volunteered. They canvassed. They donated. They went door to door. And because of that work, we are not helpless in the face of an incoming administration that promises chaos, cruelty, cupidity, and callousness.
The Big Picture with Edwin Eisendrath, Saturdays at 1 p.m.
This is WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. Filling in today for Joan, Chicago media personality, John St. Augustine.
You know, you hit the top of the pile when you're a Chicago media personality. I mean, man, I have my own parking spot today because there's nobody here. You know why? Because it's so nice out. Only Bedelia and I and Matt are working, apparently. As Harry Carey would say, it's a gorgeous day for radio and baseball. There's a new podcast up here at WCPT right now on the Joan Esposito Featured Interviews podcast. You can and share Joan's recent conversations with Reps Robin Kelly and Brad Schneider, Tom Hartman. Every time I come in here, you probably haven't heard this before, Bedelia, but I was on the radio. Tom Hartman used to be a guest of mine back in the day. I got like a dozen shows with Hartman long before anybody heard of him on the radio. I was doing, his book at the time was called The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight. He's an environmentalist. And so we probably did a dozen shows or something over the years. I have to find those. It'd be a kick to hear him. Joel Ostro is also part of Joan's podcast lineup. Wisconsin Congressman Mark Pocan, and much more. Joan's featured interviews and full episodes, not half episodes. These are full episodes, kids. They're available at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and Amazon. And just for the record, I know they're on Amazon. I get it. My books are selling on Amazon. I get it. But I like the Amazon when it was just a river in South America. Do you know what I'm saying? The guy that put all this together. On one hand, you can't begrudge people their success because it's built on the stuff we buy. On the other hand, not so much. Search for Joan Esposito or get the links on her show page by visiting heartlandsignal.com and clicking on her picture. And it will take you right to where you need to know for the podcast. So back to this VA thing. Nobody's calling, huh? Chicken, eh? Chicken, eh? I'm not here to argue with it. I just want to hear your experiences. If you've been to Hines or been to Joliet or even the other one downtown, give me a buzz if you want to talk about veterans, your experience there as a veteran, and happy to take the call. 773-763-9278. The other thing that was kind of grinding my gears this past week, and I was able to, on my podcast, the Life 2.0 podcast, which is on Podbean and Spotify and Apple and iHeart, but not Amazon, go figure, is this whole thing about the Enola Gay. Now, I'm sure that, you know, we're all past that in the news cycle, but this just sticks in my head about this is like a core sample. You know, when they go to the Arctic or the Antarctic, they want to know what's been happening for years and years and years. They drill down and they pull out a core sample, tells you everything. This whole thing about the DEI and the DOD websites removing these references to gay is just beyond my comprehension on some level. Then the next level, I'm thinking they don't even understand what's going on. There's too many nitwits, halfwits, and dimwits in the stoop. It's just too much. It's beyond their comprehension. So I did this podcast pointing out that Enola Gay was, of course, a B-29 Super Fortress bomber that dropped the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And the pilot named the plane after his mom, Enola Gay Haggard. Haggard was her maiden name. So I did the research on this. This all happened back in, it started in 1937. And by the time the bomb was dropped, the pilot had, become an American hero and a war hero and all these amazing things and war medals and everything you can imagine was bestowed upon this guy. And those images have been on ever since they've had a website, have been up there. And plus the plane in its fully restored capacity has been at the National Air and Space Museum in our nation's capital for decades. And I'm thinking to myself, Enola Gay has been splayed right out there. Nobody was offended. I don't think anybody's offended. Especially anybody that's been in the military wasn't offended because you know the backstory. And then I thought all those thousands and thousands and thousands of people that have walked past Enola Gay, they didn't suddenly change their gender and become gay or something. So where does this come from? I can't even get into the deep end of that. But if you do the history on the word gay, originally it was just to be happy. So when I did my podcast, I'm able to use words I can't use on the radio because they're not FCC approved. Let me just tell you that right now. Badil, you okay? You know where I'm headed here, right? I can't say it. She'll beat me out. And they won't ask me back and I won't get hot dogs anymore. But if you dig into it, it was to refer about having to be full of life and be happy. And when it was really started in the 12th century, life was a you-know-what hole. Wasn't a whole lot going on that made people happy back then. That was the word. It comes from the Germanic word and a French word. So they put them together. That's how, and it transpired over the years and transformed over the years. And at one point, it really was about defining men and women who were promiscuous. They were gay. It had nothing to do with their sexuality. Just they were making their rounds. So anyway, this goes on and on and on. It's changed over years. And now it's become this horrible thing, right? That somehow if you remove these things, people will be what? Less gay? So what do we do with things like deck the halls with boughs of holly and donning our gay apparel? Has that got to go? We can't sing there's a war on Christmas now because we can't have that. What about the guy that William Gay played for the Detroit Lions? Great defensive end. Does he got to be scrubbed from the NFL rosters? You don't want to mess with this guy. 6'5", 260. He'd probably give you a fight. What about Marvin Gaye? Well, that's spelled different. Anyway, we're going to go to the phone. Steve. I think I've talked to Steve before in the past. Steve, Gold Coast, VA. Welcome, brother.
Yes, and you raise an excellent point. I mean, for most people who are above a certain age, we remember either through our own experiences or through that of our parents. Yes, that was a word that existed long before it was identified with a certain sexual orientation.
Right.
And the idea that the two can't coexist is just ridiculous. So, yes, it's come to identify a certain group of people, but it also means a lot of other things. And, yes, you can be gay. I know a lot of people don't use the word anymore in that context. But, yeah, I mean, when somebody decided to put that on the side of an aircraft in World War II, it didn't mean what it means today.
Right. I mean, have you ever seen the Fred Astaire movie, The Gay Divorcee?
Yeah.
He wasn't gay.
You can watch all sorts of black
Ginger Rogers not gay.
Yeah.
It meant they were happy to be divorced back in the day, Steve.
Exactly. So it's a word that became associated with a certain movement, and now, of course, it's vilified. Well, no, sorry. But, again, the people who sort of make these choices, these decisions, are just people who are limited intellect, don't understand historical context. Terms change, words change in terms of how we use them. And again, to apply it to something like the Enola Gay, I mean, Christ, I mean, it's just ridiculous.
It really is. I appreciate the call, Steve. And I think we've talked before, have we not?
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah, I think so.
I do call
so I appreciate you bringing up that I had one good point. I'll try and make more.
And if I may, you're right. We really do need to address the whole VA issue because, you talk about an administration that seems determined to shoot itself in the foot. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's one thing to say, you know what, our voters don't particularly have a love affair with the Department of Education. That's true. Republicans have been vilifying the Department of Education for decades. But to go about the process of cutting the VA in terms of its staffing and so forth, as we are attempting to service the needs of veterans coming out of two major conflicts over the last 20-plus years in Afghanistan and Iraq, not to mention the war on terror, which was global. These people are going to need those services. And this idea that, oh, by the way, those are largely Republican voters, and you're going to cut their services. I mean, you apparently don't want to win another election. And it's very easy not to because, let's not forget, yes, this was a decisive victory in 2024. But in 2018, Donald Trump got trounced. And in 2020, he got trounced. And in 2022, he got trounced. So, and he and MAGA and so forth. So this isn't the end of the world. They can lose again, and they can lose big.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate the call. Here's the other thing about that. A lot of the crisis hotline workers have been let go for the VA. So we all see these things bounce around online. It says 22 veterans a day take their lives. Do something about it, and it's not just thoughts and prayers, kids. These people need help. And this is PTSD at the nth level. Not stuff that I've gone through, but way above all that. So you're telling me that the best way to serve our veteran population, especially those who need it the most, look, I just go in because I need a checkup or I need my back adjusted. I don't need to go sit in a support group. So what if those things are starting to be cut back because there's not people to do it? I was talking to one of the doctors who, again, I've mentioned both of their names. You think they're their real names, but they might not be because I'm on radio. But anyway, the thing was brought up that, if you thought things were tough before and slow before, which they weren't, they're going to slow way back. And so once again, you just look at the ripple effect of this when you're cutting loose this many people. And I find it fascinating. And you're going to hear this in a clip that was sent to me by Senator Duckworth's office a little bit later, where she's like, hey, I'm all for government spending being put in place, and I'm all for, stopgap measures and figuring things out and cutting excess and waste. But you don't go in and just explode it and blow it up with no recourse for these people, especially the veterans. Listen, I feel for anybody who's lost their job in this. But listen, I'm a veteran. It's just on me. I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I guess they're not. So I look at this and I say to myself, what is it that I can do about these things? Well, number one thing is that I came in here today and I said to Matt, I said, listen, brother, a lot of what I'm talking about today is the VA and the veterans in particular, not just the Veterans Administration, but the services that are put out for these veterans. When I go in there, I'm always the youngest guy in the room, and I'm 66. I go in there to Hines and I see men and women that are well into it. 80s, some in their 90s. There was a guy sitting in the waiting room who had a World War II hat on. You know how old you got to be to wear a World War II hat? So you're in your late 80s, early 90s, if not more. And he was sitting there. What was his name? Edward or something like that. And we just said hi, and I thanked him for his service. And he looked at me and he says, you were in the Coast Guard, huh? I said, yeah. He goes, you guys don't get enough credit. I'm like, well, there's a flash. We've been hearing that since 1790. Anyway, we're going to go to Ron, who wants some comments about the VA. Ron, welcome to the show.
Hello, I'm a Vietnam veteran.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, brother.
You're welcome. A Vietnam veteran against the war, and we were the first ones to fight for PTSD recognition, for Agent Orange recognition, and we actually had to go to the VA and stage sit-ins and things like that. And the other veterans organizations, VFW, American Legion, they all called us communists and traitors and things like that because we protested the war, but but now you go to any one of those VA organizations, they're all 100% on board, PTSD,
sure.
Agent Orange, but we were the first ones to fight for it, and our people are dying out right now, because under Nixon we had a federal trial in Gainesville, the Gainesville 7, I believe it was, where the federal government charged us with conspiracy to attack the Republican, total fabrication, but it cost our organization millions of dollars, and the bad publicity scared a lot of veterans away. But we still maintain, we build libraries in Vietnam. We do things like that. It's I wish I could go back, but I can't walk really anymore. But the thing of it is, when they start cutting VA benefits, the veterans are a different group of people.
Yes, sir.
They've been through a lot, and I'm going to tell you, many of them are still armed to the teeth, and hopefully that doesn't come down to a confrontation.
Yeah.
But many of them still believe when they threw their medals at the Capitol years ago, and they said the next fight's going to be over here at the Capitol. It's coming to that. It's coming to that, in my opinion. And the Republicans, they keep saying they want civil war. And the thing of it is, a lot of Vietnam veterans and other veterans are suffering from PTSD. And the VA is the only thing that's keeping them from going over the edge.
Agreed. Listen, Ron, I want to say thanks for your service, brother, because first of all, my cousin, who's basically my older brother, was in Vietnam 2 tours and has been battling the effects of Agent Orange for a very, very long time. So shout out to the Sarge for that. I want to jump over to Dan real quick. We got about a minute before I got to run into a break. Oh, well, let's get the Navy guy on. Is that Ed? Yeah. Let's do Navy. I want to buck on him for a little bit. Sure. Hey, Ed.
Yeah.
Navy guy, huh?
Yeah.
Atta boy.
peacetime Navy, but I loved it. And last 19 years, I've been dealing with Heinz. Nothing but excellence as far as I'm concerned. The treatment, the personalities of the people there. You mentioned Dr. Gutierrez. He's my primary.
Oh, come on.
Yes.
What are the odds of that?
Yeah, how about it? Yeah.
Nice.
My stepdaughter was a psychiatric supervisor there.
Yeah.
And she moved to Wisconsin, so she's at the VA in Madison.
Hey, Ed, does Gutierrez tell you to lose weight and go, do things you shouldn't do?
All the time. He says, when you order a Portillo's beef, take half of the beef off.
Yeah, well, but he also weighs about as much as a shoe, so he shouldn't be saying that stuff. He's a thin fella.
He sure is.
Well, listen, Ed, I got one last comment. Go ahead, then I got to run to the news.
No, I like he's a great guy. I like his attitude, and I like I said, I have nothing but superlative comments about Heinz VA there.
Well, I appreciate your service in the Navy and Coast Guard. The Coast Guard's been helping the Navy find their way home since 1790.
Oh, really? Yeah. How about it?
And I appreciate the call. All right, we're going to bug out and get to the news here in just a second. And I already see that Rhonda's on the line waiting to talk, so I can't wait to get to her. But first, the news right here on WCPT, where facts friggin' matter.
Retired or retiring soon? How much money do you need to live comfortably? Retirement Planners of America is here for you. Would you like to have financial peace of mind? Here's how. Step 1. Find out the amount of money you'll need to retire. Step 2. Have a plan to get there. Step 3. Make sure that plan can take advantage of market gains but protect you from market losses. Discover how to do all three with a free consultation at 800-508-6108. That's 800-508-6108.
All investments involve risk, including losses. Past performance does not guarantee future results.
Question: where were you on May 3rd, 2005? If you were listening to the radio, you may have heard the first day on the air for WCPT. On Saturday, May 3rd, WCPT is celebrating 20 years on the air with a big live broadcast from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. We'll be at Max and Benny's restaurant in Northbrook, and WCPT listeners can attend this special 4-hour broadcast. Al Sparks will kick off the celebration with the WCPT broadcast team. Richard Chu, Joan Esposito, Patty Vasquez, and Scott Duff, as well as surprise guests from our 20-year history. It's the WCPT 20th anniversary, and you're invited to come and celebrate with us. To register for this special event, go to WCPT.com and click on the WCPT anniversary banner. Seating is limited and will sell out quickly. Go to WCPT.com today to register. See you on Saturday, May 3rd from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. at Max and Benny's in Northbrook.
So spread the word that WCPT is just great.
You're listening to WCPT 820. Here's the latest Chicago weather updates.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. Sunny skies here this afternoon. We'll see high into the mid-50s. Winds out of the northeast around 5 to 10 miles per hour. And then for tonight, mostly clear skies, a low near 37. By Thursday, sunshine, a high of 59 degrees. Friday, plenty of blue skies and sun, a high of 74. Saturday, we'll have a slight chance for rain showers, cloudy, high of 64. That's your latest Chicago weather update.
Currently, it's 52.
This is Chicago's Progressive Talk, 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and online at WCPT820.com, where facts matter.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. Filling in today for Joan, Chicago media personality, John St. Augustine.
I'm just an old radio guy. I don't know about a media personality, but okay, we'll go with that. I am so excited to have this first guest on this afternoon here with you in Chicago on WCPT. I'm guessing that I first met Rhonda Britten back in none of your business what year it was. Rhonda Britten is an Emmy Award winning repeat Oprah guest when she was on television, the founder of the Fearless Living Institute, an organization dedicated to giving anyone the tools they need to master their emotional fears. She's the author of 4 national bestsellers, including Fearless Living, which was her groundbreaking work called the Wheel technology in that. During her 3 seasons in the hit daytime reality drama Starting Over, she was named America's favorite life coach and was dubbed Starting Over's most valuable player by the New York Times. She is a globally recognized expert on the subject of fear and fearlessness. I could ask for nobody better to help us walk through this, what's going on now, which is the influx of what I'm pretty sure is PTSD for just about everybody on the planet. And she joins me. Rhonda.
Oh my gosh, it is PTSD for sure. The whole entire planet is having it, 100%.
You know, listen, when I reached, the last time we were together, it's been a few years, sister, I know. But I remember some of I went actually back and found some cassette tapes with your name on them.
Ooh.
Yeah,
oh my
retro,
gosh,
serious
gosh.
retro. And those are from like when your first book came out, when Fearless Living came out. And the one thing we had in common back then is that at the time, even though I'm a Chicagoan, born and raised, I was living in the Upper Peninsula, and you were born there.
That's right. I was raised and born in Upper Michigan. Loved it up there. Still love it up there.
Yep.
Going there this summer. I love going up there, and I love Chicago. Lived in Chicago, and right on North Street. And I'm a Midwest girl at heart. I live in LA, but really, I'm a Midwest girl.
You're a Youper.
I'm a total Youper, yes. And oh my God, you show me a pasty or Lake Superior, I'm all about it. Give me a pasty. And oh, by the way, it is sauna, not sauna.
Yeah, that's right. It's sauna. Yeah, I learned that. I got yelled at a few times. It's not sauna. It's sauna.
I'm 100% Finnish. 100% Finnish. So you got to say that right. Sauna.
The Finlanders, yeah, hey there. So
yeah, that's right, eh?
The reason I reached out to you, there's a couple of pieces here. And you, in all full disclosure, we spoke yesterday, and you were like, "What? It's tomorrow, right?" I'm like, "Yeah, settle down. We're all good." But you're the first name that popped in my head, thinking because let's go back to even to the first times or two we spoke on the air back in the day. There was no such thing as unsocial media like there is now.
Yeah,
the internet, if it did exist, it was in its infancy.
That's right.
We did not have these cell phones that the entire world sits in our hands constantly. We spend all these hours looking at this handheld device, smartphones making us not so smart, and all these ways that this influx of information comes at us constantly. And the reason and when we talked about it yesterday, the reason I asked you to come on is I think the most difficult thing, at least in my opinion on a lot of this, is constantly poking at people about things they can't do anything about except get pissed off.
Yeah. I mean, it's rough because one, we all think differently. We're all getting different information because we don't have Walter Cronkite anymore. Darn it all, I wish we did. And that's the challenge is, ever since they changed the law, before the FCC, if you let one politician on, you had to let the opposite politician on. And so you were able to get fair, somewhat fair and balanced, so to speak. But now that law went away, 20-some years ago, and that law going away created these silos. Yep. And as we know, these silos, you're only getting the same information. You're getting regurgitated information in order to create that feeling of belonging. Yep. So we want our number one human need is belonging, and we're all trying to face a place to belong. And when we belong, it is hard to get out. It is hard to get out.
That explains a lot.
Yeah, because it's cognitive dissonance, right? So cognitive dissonance is I don't want to be uncomfortable with you challenging my beliefs, you challenging my values, you challenging my actions. So we if we are not awake, if we don't use our executive brain, if we do not have emotional intelligence at a high rate, our cognitive dissonance kicks in to protect us because we are fear aversion creatures, even though fear is nothing to be afraid of, but we are fear aversion creatures. So therefore, we got to have that cognitive dissonance kicks in. We're not aware of it. We don't know what's happening. We think this is what we believe. And it's really interesting. They were doing a survey on who kind of got caught up in some of this. And it's so interesting. There was a study done where people that do yoga, now I don't do yoga, or they do alternative medicine. I use alternative medicine. Supposedly, anytime you go into like yoga or alternative medicine, any way at all, you actually, because you believe in something alternative, you become more susceptible to believe conspiracy theories, to believe the things that are on the fringe.
So that's all perfectly well said. This is the reason you're on the show. But before we go any further, you wouldn't even be able to talk about any of this had you not gone through hell.
Yeah, crawl through glass, you mean?
Absolutely. More than once. More than once.
More than once.
And
yes.
I think whenever I hear your story, and I hope you will share it here, you have time to do that, it always reminds me that I don't have any problems. And I mean, I got to call it what it is. And I think anybody listening to what you've been through, You kind of like, well, I'm just sitting in traffic. If that's the worst of your day, you got it locked. So would you mind sharing a little bit of how this all comes to be?
Oh, sure. I'll try to make it short. So I was 14 in the Upper Peninsula. My parents were separated, and it was Father's Day. My father was coming to take us to Sunday brunch. And, my mom's fluffing up her beehive hairdo. My dad walks in the back door, says, "Come on, girls, let's go." My two sisters are fighting out in the one bathroom. Me and my mom start walking outside. It's starting to rain. My dad says, "Hey, I got to get my coat from the car." And his coat is that tan Naugahyde leisure suit coat, which is looking good. It's looking good with polyester pants and his plaid shirt. Come on now, that's good. And so as me and my mom are walking out, my dad opens the trunk. My sister's still in the house in the bathroom. And as he opens the trunk, I notice out of the corner of my eye, he's not grabbing a coat, but he's grabbing a gun. And he starts yelling at my mother, "You made me do this. You made me do this." And he fires. And I start screaming, "What are you doing, Dad? What are you doing, Dad?" And he cocks the gun again, points it at me. I absolutely believe I'm next. He blinks, I blink, he blinks, I blink. And my mother, with her last breath, literally screams out, "No, don't." And my father, in that moment, realizes my mother is still alive and takes that bullet intended for me and shoots my mother in the abdomen. The bullet goes out her back, lands in the car horn. And for the next 20 minutes, all I hear is, "Eh." And then my father cocks again a third time, puts it to his temple, and fires. So in a matter of less than 2 minutes, I was a sole witness of watching my father murder my mother and commit suicide in front of me. And I don't know how most people would react, but the way I reacted is I blamed myself because I was the only one physically out there that could have stopped him. So I didn't kick him in the shins. I didn't grab the gun. I didn't jump in for my mother. I did nothing heroic. So from that moment on, I split in two, the outside Rhonda and the inside Rhonda. The outside Rhonda, I'm fine. No, I'm fine. Come on, I'm finished. We don't have any feelings. We're fine. We're not scared. We don't have any, we have no feelings. I mean, if you're in Upper Michigan, nobody feels it, right? Nobody feels up there. And nobody talks about things up there. You can't talk about things, right? There's no going to therapy.
That's what bars are for.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So I split into two people, the outside Rhonda that's fine and the inside Rhonda who plummeted into self-despair, guilt, shame, regret, low self-esteem, and found alcohol. Alcohol takes those feelings away for a few hours. Then I got some DUIs, got three suicide attempts. And it was that third suicide attempt, John, that I realized that I'm not good at killing myself. And more importantly, there was a reason I was alive. That made me pause and go, what am I doing alive? I really want to die. And it was that moment when I realized I had to start over. I had to start all over. So I remember thinking, kindergarten, what do kindergartners do? Well, they go get gold stars and calendars. That's what I did. I got a gold stars and calendar, and I started giving myself a gold star every single day for anything I did that was positive. And I'm talking about drink and not get drunk. That's the level I was at, But that was the beginning of my shifting, and of course it took years after that for me to do what I do today. But, moving through that, and by the way, that whole time I was having nightmares every night, et cetera, I did not think I was afraid. I did not think that I was scared. And I think that's the interesting and fascinating part of human reality is that most of us do not walk around thinking we're afraid or scared. So we cannot identify when we're making choices that disempower us. Mm-hmm. We can't see it because we don't even know we're afraid. We just think that we're having a bad day. We're just complaining. We're judging. We're comparing. We're feeling bitter. We're having regret. We're procrastinating. We're people-pleasing, right? We have anxiety. All of these things. And we do not think those stem from fear, but those are simply fear responses. If you have worry, you have a fear. If you're procrastinating, you have a fear. If you can't be wrong, you have a fear. Because as we know, wisdom, scrutiny, the truth can handle scrutiny.
Yeah. So two questions, and I kind of know the answers, but I'm asking for those who have not heard you before. What do you think? You got to that break point where you said no more. A lot of people get to that point, but they go backwards or they stay in it. What do you think was the greatest challenge getting out of it for you, which could benefit somebody listening today that might be, even though the circumstances may be different than you had, but are in that place where they just can't keep going? What do you say to people? I know you've dealt with hundreds of them.
Yes, I have. Thank you. And this is what I would say to somebody who's suffering right now today. Number one, be gentle with yourself. The world is crazy right now, and we want to keep our sanity in an insane world. So be very gentle with yourself. This is extraordinary circumstances in our lifetime. So be gentle. Don't expect yourself to be exactly on top of everything and exactly when the world is sane, it's not the same. There's a heavy burden on all of us. So be gentle. The second thing is be willing to forgive yourself. Be willing to forgive yourself. See your own innocence. Be willing to forgive yourself, because I could not change my life, or I did not change my life in any dramatic way until I forgave my father, which, of course, was the easiest person to forgive. I know it seems like the hardest, but he was actually, because he was the perpetrator, he was the easiest one to identify, like, oh, he was bad. He did something horrible. And then I did the forgiveness work. And by the way, I created a forgiveness exercise that got me to be able to forgive him. And then forgiving my mother, I had to take her off the pedestal, right? Because when we put people on a pedestal, then they are not human, and we cannot see them as human, and therefore they're not equal to us, right? So I had to take my mom off the pedestal and make her just a woman. And how did she participate in all this? I had to see her as a woman, just a plain old woman. We got to take people off the pedestal. And then lastly, forgiving myself, because yes, I was only 14, but when you're 14, you feel like an adult, and watching your mother die, you feel responsible. So even though people say, oh, you're only 14, it doesn't matter. You feel like you should have been able to do something. So I had to let go of that regret. I had to let go of that regret. I had to let go of the decisions I made in the past. I had to let go of my drinking, the guilt of drinking. I had to let go of my, feelings of my DUI. I had to be able to surrender and let go of the past and get into the present moment and be willing to examine myself in real clear terms and be able to see who I was and love who I was instead of wishing I was somebody different than I was.
We're going to take a short time out, come back after this, talk more with Rhonda Britten. Right there, that last 3.5 minutes, sister, was just solid gold, so I appreciate you doing that and taking the time to talk to the folks in Chicago. We'll be back with more right after this on WCPT.
The Hal Sparks radio program.
Walmart's financial chief, John David Rainey, said tariffs are going to be inflationary. There is no disputing that. Walmart has said these costs are going to be passed on to the consumer. 60 to 70% of the things that are in your local Walmart come from China. It might as well be an Alibaba outlet store. And they're about to find out the hard way.
Hal Sparks, Saturdays from 11 to 1 on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
This is a WCPT Veteran Minute. When Pearl Harbor was attacked, men of all races across the country volunteered to join the fight, despite the United States Army being heavily segregated. Black enlistees were mostly assigned to combat support roles. But this did not stop Lieutenant Colonel Paul L. Bates, who knew of the racism and pushed his soldiers to achieve excellence. The 761st Tank Battalion was formed in the spring of 1942. It contained 30 black officers, 6 white officers, and 676 enlisted men. The unit donned the nickname the Black Panthers, wearing patches on their uniforms with a panther on it and the slogan, "Come Out Fighting." And in 1944, the 761st was assigned to General George Patton's Third Army in France. General Patton gave a colorful speech to his crew, and the Black Panthers became the first African-American tank squad in World War II. And by the end of the war, the Black Panthers had fought further east than every other United States unit, receiving 391 decorations for their heroism.
You're listening to WCPT 820, because facts matter.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. Filling in today for Joan, Chicago media personality, John St. Augustine.
Rhonda Britten is joining me here on WCPT. She is an Emmy Award winner. When the Oprah Show was on, she was an oft-times requested guest, knocked it out of the park there, and the founder of the Fearless Living Institute, and of course the best-selling author of 4 national bestsellers. I just said bestseller twice, but so what? And just hearing her story now, you know why I asked her to come on the show today. Rhonda, so interesting to me that, this PTSD concept, it's almost like the PTSD doesn't matter what the impetus is that created it, that somehow there is an event in our life that changes the course of our lives in ways we could never predict, and finding our way back to some sense of normalcy can be a really, really daunting task. So I know you kind of glazed over the drinking and the rest of this stuff, but it wasn't like you said, oh, I did this big forgiveness exercise, the next thing you know on the Oprah Show. And I don't recall that.
No, it took a few years. It took some years. No, I had to crawl myself out, right? Awareness is the first thing. Just willing to be aware. And, I always say, are you willing to be wrong about everything to find the right life for you?
Will you replace that? Say that one more time, please. Repeat that. Are you willing to be wrong about everything to find the right life for you?
Right? Are you willing to be wrong about everything? If you're not willing to be wrong, then you're attached, and that attachment will color your perception. So anything that you're attached to creates your identity. And if you're not willing to change your identity, then you cannot change. You cannot shift. You can't go from a poor man to a rich man. You can't, because you have an identity of belonging.
So one of the things that I say to people all the time, and I know that I'm going to ask you the question, have you ever seen Democrat or Republican on a headstone? Right? You see father,
I have not.
Right?
No,
father, mother, sister, brother, auntie, uncle, veteran, beloved.
That's right.
And so much of our personalities, especially these days, are wrapped up in our politics.
That's right.
And if your politics are over here and you see these things happening there, Stevie Wonder could see it's happening, you know what I'm saying? And you're still not willing to call it what it is, there's a serious disconnect there.
Yep. Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, we're in a coup. It's happening right now. It is not happening. It is happening. And the fact that there's no impeachment going on, the fact that the Republicans, the fact that 30% of the country does not see it. They actually believe all of this is good. You know, and that's what cognitive
until they lose their job.
Until they lose their job. And you know what? I was just that sometimes.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I've looked at getting ready for this show. I watched about 15 videos, and they're all on YouTube, and you can say they're real or not. You know, I don't care. If we get into that, where you're like, I don't know if this is real, you've already got some sort of blind spot. But there was 15 or 20 videos I watched of people who said they voted for the president more than once, couldn't believe they lost their job, and they don't know what to do, and they wouldn't vote for him again. And I'm sitting back here going, okay, how do you not see this going in?
Because they're in a news silo. They literally are in a news silo. They listen to the same types of shows that give the same type of information. And the sad thing is that these quote-unquote news shows, as you and I both know, they're not news shows at all.
That's right.
They're propaganda machines. So, you know, when you have been brainwashed, and by the way, my uncle was a Republican. He has since died, which I miss him very much, in the Upper Peninsula. And the last couple of years of his life, I would go live in the UP for like 5 months a year and stay with him. And he watched Fox News every night. And as I watched Fox News with him, because I sat with him, I'm going to be with them. I'd have my computer out, but I'd be listening to the news. Fox News is definitely using NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. It is absolutely using hypnotic suggestions to their audiences. And when I was watching that night after night, I thought to myself, no wonder. Because if I wasn't awake, I would believe it too.
Yeah.
Because they're having you go, and isn't that crazy? And you're going, yes. Well, they get you to say yes before they drop the information that seems completely ridiculous. But you've already said yes. So your cognitive dissonance, you must say yes to that. So they absolutely, I 100% believe, 100% that they're using NLP consciously, purposely, in order to brainwash their audiences.
Well, and you go back a couple, 3 years ago when they had to fork over $785 million, admitted they're an entertainment organization, but the people that are watching it don't know that or don't get that, nor do they even believe it. And then I go back to my business, which is radio, and for decades, Rush Limbaugh was on saying, it's just entertainment.
Yeah.
Well, to the uninitiated... Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's right. And they lost their court. They would win their court cases. I think Hannity won his court case because it says it's entertainment.
Right.
And he even used the phrase like nobody would believe this stuff is real. He actually used that as his defense.
Yeah.
But the challenge is that there are innocent people out there that really. Yes. I mean, they didn't want to get brainwashed. They didn't want to get inundated this way. But one thing at a time, one alternative thought, one alternative fact, one yes turns into a second yes, turns into a third yes, which now turns into an identity, which turns into a wall, which turns into this is how I belong, and our deepest need is to belong. Well, this is what I belong to now. And, I mean, breaking that belonging, breaking that identity takes great courage and great awareness, and a great willingness.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I've been watching, I don't know if you saw the one about Nebraska. Nebraska is literally going to go belly up in 6 months because every single rancher voted for Trump, or they say, pretty much most ranchers, and all of their workers are immigrants, and they voted to get rid of the immigrants, and now they have literally no workers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's all theory until it's reality, right? And to me, this whole concept, and I got to be real dirt honest here, as I always am when there's a microphone in front of me, or even when there isn't. It's like, here's how I see it. The only time in my whole life that I ever thought the president was that important was back when I was in the service because Ronald Reagan was president. And they were closing bases. And one of my jobs, if I was on the comms watch, was to go up and make sure that we weren't being closed in 24 hours. That was it. And then after that, there was this long period of nothing until things started ramping up, and there's more money in this, and there's more online, and there's more greed and more infiltration, all these kind of things. And I'm thinking to myself, sometimes I think, Superman, the whole truth, justice in the American way doesn't exist anymore. There was a time that was the prevailing mentality, and now it's like, wait, what?
Well, that's the thing that is the biggest heartbreak of all. And I do believe that there's good people, and I do believe that that's alive, and I do believe that more of us believe in that quality of being. I mean, they do. So, I mean, what's the heartbreaking thing to me is not that 30% of the population is brainwashed. Okay, that's heartbreaking, yes. But what's really heartbreaking is the leaders of our country are not standing up for the truth, and our lawyers are not standing up for the law. Our judges are not standing up for the law. There is a whole swath of people. I mean, the fact that he's not impeached because he's broken every law in the book, is just shocking. It's shocking. And so, and that's the thing. It's like they're not following the law, the very law that is the foundation of our country. And that is what's heartbreaking to me. You know what I knew was going to be a problem, Rhonda? When he mocked the disabled reporter. Exactly, 100%. And I had a kid when I was growing up named Rusty. Rusty was disabled. He had cerebral palsy, and he was mentally retarded. He can't really say that now, but he's mentally impaired. I just said it on the radio, so excuse me. But he was picked on mercilessly. They would take his shoes and throw him over the top of the telephone wires and picked on him. Somebody tried to get him to drink a bottle of urine one time. And it broke my heart. I was a little kid. I watched this. I couldn't believe it. And then years later, I see this guy running for the highest office in the land, mocking a disabled reporter, and people laughing and applauding. I went right back to the playground. Yeah, and I thought, really, they're still here. Yeah, I just think I think that this has unleashed everybody's, hidden rage, and they're acting out. But I think that there is an end to that, because eventually that anger fuels out. So, just like a candle, you're angry for a while, maybe 10 years, maybe 8 years, maybe 20 years. But finally, that wick hits the bottom, and that anger diffuses. So whether that's losing your kid because they don't want to talk to you anymore because of this, or like you said, losing your job, or starting maybe to see some light. But the thing is, there is going to be a rude awakening, and it may not be until our whole government has been privatized and we're under tyranny, which, by the way, we already are. So bottom line is, I don't know when it's going to wake up. I know that I'm awake, you're awake, and those of us awake need to stay awake. We need to do what we can do. We need to protest. We need to call. We need to do whatever we can. We need to go to town halls, and we need to be in control of what we can control and take action where we can and have a voice. Yep. Last couple of minutes we have here before I got to get to the news and cut you loose. You said something about taking your mom off the pedestal. Was it your mom or your dad? My mom. I had to take her off the pedestal. And you said not seeing her as this perfect human and all these things, that she had her flaws. And I think part of the illusion about the guy that's in the Oval Office now is he's somehow on a pedestal, this perfect human being. And it reminds me of the guy in North Korea. Like somehow these are perfect humans. And I'm thinking, this guy sold everything from sneakers to Bibles to watches, and people sopped this stuff up left and right. I'm thinking, my auntie, who was a devout Lutheran, would be throwing Bibles at this guy, not buying ones that are signed for $300. So can you talk in the last minute or so that we have together about the importance of being as real as you can and getting over that? Yeah, you got to take people off the pedestal. Anybody that you think is above you, better than you, then you are creating a distance, a separation, and in that you're the loser. You're the loser unless they have qualities of being that you want. But I don't think really anybody wants the qualities of Trump, because everybody can say, oh, he's mean, yes, he's a bully. Even they say it, right? Oh, yeah, but they want his wealth. They want his results. That's not a character. That's not character. So you got to take every single human being that you've got on a pedestal off the pedestal and see them for their human they are. Trump is flawed. I'm flawed. John's flawed. We're all flawed. They're flawed. And as more that you can embrace your flaws, the more that you actually can express happiness, the more you can connect with people, the more you'll feel loved, the more you'll have self-worth, the more you won't need other people to fill you up and push you up. You can have it yourself. You can have sovereignty and agency. So take them off the pedestal. see him as the flawed human being he is.
I think so many people are looking for a savior, not realizing that it's them, that it's them themselves that move forward in life. Listen, thank you so much for taking the time to do this way out in Los Angeles. So if people want to, and they should, be scooping up your books and learning more about what you do and how they can participate and have you help them in their lives, how do they do it?
fearlessliving.org, and go grab a free course, fearlessliving.org/risk, RISK, and it's going to support you in getting unstuck, realizing your dreams, moving forward, getting your goals, and leaving procrastination behind. So fearlessliving.org/risk, RISK.
It is so good to hear your voice in my ear.
As it is mine, yours.
I appreciate you. Thank you, Rhonda. Take care. I'm telling you, folks, if you're in a corner, she's the one to help you get out. This is just prize-winning stuff here. Anyway, we'll take a jump to the news here in a second, come back with Tom Skilling after the top of the hour, right here on WCPT, where facts matter.
Hey there, it's Carrie Joy with your Work Money Minute. A lot of financial chatter is focused on the stock market. Is it up? Is it down? Is it a bull market? Is it a bear market? The Dow just hit a record high. But how much should people like me and you really care about these daily updates? The answer? Not very much. Most of those daily highs and lows come from small-scale events that just don't mean that much to the broader U.S. economy. And the stock market is not the economy. For most of us, long-term growth is what really matters for retirement. Now, if you are one of the richest 10% of Americans who own 93% of all the stock, you can ignore this message. But for the rest of us, we're going to get more done by keeping an eye on our spending and savings than we are by paying attention to Wall Street. For more practical money tips, visit workmoney.org. Till next time, take good care.
Hair Volume is the best-selling hair tablet in the world and one of many award-winning natural hair products from New Nordic. Purchase at newnordicusa.com or CVS.
AP News, I'm Haya Punjwani. President Trump is ramping up a trade war on U.S. allies after raising tariffs to 25% on aluminum and steel.
The president's moves are part of a bigger effort to both disrupt and transform global commerce.
The United States of America is going to take back a lot of what was stolen from it by other countries.
He's also planning reciprocal tariffs next month on Brazil, South Korea, and the European Union, which announced its own countermeasures aimed partly at goods like beef and wood products from Republican states. Canada's blasting the tariffs on what finance chief Dominic LeBlanc calls its iconic steel and aluminum industries, and says it will boost import taxes on everything from U.S. computers to sporting goods.
We will use every tool at our disposal to defend Canadian jobs and Canadian businesses and support workers.
Sagar Magani, Washington.
The Education Department has gutted its Civil Rights Office, leaving discrimination cases in limbo. AP correspondent Mariah Ballingett.
What do these layoffs mean? Well, we are still trying to understand that. But here's a little bit about what the department does. It handles more than $1 trillion in student loans and grants. And there are nearly 43 million Americans who have them. It also oversees billions of dollars in funding for K-12 schools. And finally, it ensures that the civil rights of students are being safeguarded.
Senator Ben Ray Lujan, a Democrat from New Mexico, says that he hopes the federal funding bill brings attention to what House Republicans aren't addressing.
But in the end, I certainly hope people take note of what House Republicans did here in ignoring everyone else, and rather than moving important pieces of legislation that would not be devastating to folks, provide more certainty to veterans, that's where folks should be pushing as well.
This is AP News. It's the Battle of the Bands.
Big East tournament here in New York City this week for men's basketball put together a series of promotional events, and the Battle of the Bands at the Vessel was one of those.
Elizabeth Sokolowski is the director of bands at Villanova University. She says the Vessel at Hudson Yards in New York City is hosting a Battle of the Bands. It features marching bands from St. John's, Seton Hall, Villanova, and Marquette. The bands performed across the structure's staircases and platforms with the city and Hudson River in the background.
So our students are the ones who choose the music as we're performing. They're listening to what the other bands are playing. And then they're deciding, oh, let's do this one next.
The event marked the start of the 2025 Big East men's basketball tournament. I'm Haya Panjwani, AP News.
This is 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Now, your WCPT 820 weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Regina Kroll. For this evening, mostly clear as we drop back to 37. Warmer Thursday, high of 59 and sunny. Then passing clouds come in for Thursday night as we bottom out around 48. Temperatures warm even more for Friday, high of 74, mostly sunny, but it will be windy. Showers and thunderstorms come in Friday night. Mostly cloudy, we dip back to 55. Showers and storms will linger into Saturday too. Partly sunny and a high of 64. That's your latest Chicago weather update. Right now it's 52 degrees.
You're the only voice of reason on the radio.
You give me hope.
Having listened to you every day.
Thank you for your clear insight.
Always felt a little bit smarter.
I listen to you every single day. I keep coming back to this station, and thank you for what you do.
On WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk.
Alexa, play WCPT.
WCPT from TuneIn.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. Filling in today for Joan, Chicago media personality, John St. Augustine.
I'm never going to get used to that, Lady B. This whole media personality thing is just a bit over my pay grade, sister. So listen real quick before I jump to something real quick with David Hodberg. I hear these spots for vet ticks and for the Library of Congress Veterans Project. Number one, I'm a member of VetTix. Unsolicited endorsement here. I've used them. They're fantastic, so it's on the up and up. And then I mentioned my brother from another mother, the Sarge, Rich Hoffman, 2 tours in Vietnam, USMC, Semper Fi. He told his story to the Library of Congress. He is on file there. I've listened to it a couple times. It is so well worth your time to take go to online and go to the Library of Congress and go back to the Vietnam era and listen to these stories that are there. And if you need to, you could always add your own as well. So I heard those on the way in Tom's show, and well worth the visit to do both of those things. If you're looking to purchase a new home or refinance your existing home, you need to call Team Hochberg. They are your trusted local lender with over 500 5-star Google reviews. Serious star reviews. Kathy, 60 years old, a nurse, lives in a $600,000 home. She called Team Hochberg for a free consultation to consolidate the over $30,000 she accumulated on her credit cards after her husband had passed away. After speaking with David, Kathy posted this 5-star Google review. David was helpful. He didn't try to sell me anything. What a great guy to do that. That's how it should be. It's not be selling stuff. He advised me to keep my current mortgage because of my low rate. Imagine that. He advised her to keep doing what she's doing, but he offered excellent advice, was very patient, kind, and knowledgeable. That's why he's successful as he is. I added that. It's not on my copy. I highly recommend his services to anyone looking for a mortgage or any financial expertise. If you, and I'm talking to you, like this 5-star service on your next mortgage, give Team Hochberg a call, 855-563-2843, or visit 56david.com. David's helped thousands of WCPT listeners, but he can't help you if you don't pick up the Amici and give him a call, 855. Does anybody besides me, I bet Tom Skilling knows why they call it Amici. I'll ask him in a few minutes. The Amici, it's a phone. If you can tell me what that is, I'll give you a cookie. David's helped thousands of WCPT listeners, but you got to give him a call, 855-563-2843, or visit 56david.com. Lower.com, equal housing lender, NMLS, try and say that 3 times, we're not used to it, 112-4061. So I'm so excited to have my friend Tom Skilling coming up. Let me just give you a little quick thumbnail sketch. He is the WGN Chief Meteorologist Emeritus. He appeared on WGN Evening News, WGN News at 9, WGN News at 10. He basically was just all over WGN. He celebrated his 45th anniversary with GN back in August of 2023 and retired from WGN-TV at the end of February of last year. He started a successful career at the unheard age of 14. He doesn't even look that old. Down in Aurora, Illinois, while attending West Aurora High School. For the next 38 years, he hosted tornado and severe weather warnings at Fermilab seminars. This guy has done it all, and I've always enjoyed my time with him. So before I bring him up, I want to drop this real quick Earth Matters with Bill Curtis.
He might just be the most trusted weatherman in the business. Millions rely on his predictions, and he has a lot to say about climate change. As the chief meteorologist for WGN in Chicago and across America for the past 37 years, Tom Skilling has been studying weather patterns. And when it comes to climate change, he says our planet is on a record-shattering streak. Atmospheric concentrations of carbon dioxide are now over 400 parts per million. This is the first time in more than 800,000 years that there has been this much carbon in the atmosphere. When baseball got out of whack, congressional hearings led to modifications to America's national pastime. However, it's become apparent that Congress is not inclined to act on stemming the pollution that leads to the extreme weather-causing climate change that we're experiencing. If we trust him for the everyday weather, maybe we should pay close attention to his long-term forecast as well. I'm Bill Curtis for Earth Matters.
And with that, my friend Tom Skilling. Tommy, welcome to the show.
John, it's great to talk to you. You know, the work that you and Bill have done in this arena has been just amazing, and it's flattering as heck to be included in your effort. John, it's always fun to talk to you. I know we've talked on this subject many times,
yep.
And it continues to be a big issue. And
it sure does.
Now we've added to it. We've added to it now these budget cuts to our operational National Weather Service activities that are concerning, especially as we head into tornado season here. So lots to talk about today, John. I look forward to talking with you about it.
So, Tom, two things. You know why they call a phone an Amici?
No. Please tell me.
So I believe Don Amici, the great actor, played Alexander Graham Bell. And that's where that comes from.
Right.
So I guess I'm the only guy in America knows why they call it Amici. And the second thing is, I had to tell you, the last time I think you were on the radio with me in this format, I was at another radio station. I was filling in for the great Gary Meyer. And when Gary was on from 4 to 7 o'clock, an afternoon drive, all he had to do was say, where's your, welcome to the show, and the phone lines would light up. And the reason I realized the phone lines were lighting up is because you were on a couple times during that slot, and you would talk about weather and things like that, but people wanted to call you and find out what the weather was like in French Lick, Indiana or something. And I was just fascinated with people's fascination, A, about the weather, and B, about the guy that delivers it. So, it's amazing to me, this trust that you have with people, especially here in the Midwest, is unbreakable. Trust that you have. And just as that Earth Matters alluded to, if we trust this guy with the weather, and millions do, then we kind of need to listen to what you're saying about climate change. So in the interim, can you explain the difference, Tom, between weather, which is what most of us experience, and climate, which is different?
Yeah, well, the weather is the instantaneous phase of the atmosphere. Climate is the weather averaged over decades and centuries. So, that's why, John, when we have a cold wave and people say, hey, what happened to global warming? That's the wrong approach. One cold wave or a heat wave, for that matter, does not a climate trend make. You have to look over a period of time and see what the trend is, which is what we've done. And there's no question, John, it's just irrefutable. The planet is warming. Not only is our atmosphere warming, but so is the ocean. And look, all weather on Earth is the result of one area gets warmer than another. We call that differential heating in the meteorological profession. And if you start fiddling with how we're warming this planet, which is what happens when you put into the atmosphere heat-retaining and re-radiating gases, these so-called greenhouse gases, methane, carbon dioxide, water vapor is a greenhouse gas. It's the reason this planet is livable, because it holds on to heat, and we're not as cold as in outer space, which would have prohibited life development as we know it on this planet.
Right.
So, we're the carbon. It's interesting, John. We've a fellow who was a Northwestern University of Illinois alum put a sensor on top of Mauna Loa, a volcano out in the Hawaiian Islands. This was Charles Keating, Dr. Charles Keating. Keeling, and he worked for Scripps Institute of Oceanography. He put that sensor up there in the 1950s, and ever since then, we've been getting a read out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean of the carbon dioxide levels. It's the longest-running instrument record of carbon dioxide levels And, of course, it's been up and away. We've reached new levels on carbon dioxide. But then, the paleoclimatologists, these are the folks that use proxy indicators, everything from tree rings to bubbles of gas in ice and so forth. They can go back and take these tiny bubbles of ice that were trapped there from the early atmosphere. This goes back hundreds of thousands of years. And they can tell us pretty much what the atmosphere was composed of and what our greenhouse gas concentration was then. So we've got a pretty good running record of carbon dioxide levels in the planet going back hundreds of thousands, even a couple million years. And the trend has been for this to increase. This carbon dioxide, a heat-retaining, heat-radiating gas. And so what's happening is when you start changing the heating of the planet, the jet streams realign. The jet streams carry a lot of our storms. The planet, when the air is warm, holds more water. Every degree Celsius that the atmosphere warms means the atmosphere holds 4% more water. And we see very real indications of that in that, our hurricanes, for instance, have gotten much wetter than they were. And, there's been an upward trend in precipitation across Illinois. But there are also periods on the other end of the spectrum of drought. So, extreme weather, that's the calling card of climate change, and that's what's going on. And, of course, we saw what happened in Los Angeles most recently with those wildfires out there. And the word is just in today, John, that February was the third warmest month, February, on the books around here, going back more than 100 years, back into the 1800s, across the planet. So, there are continued signs we're getting warmer.
So, Tom, I hear from people quite often, and you're the perfect guy to ask because I know you'll have the right answer. I kind of know what the answer is, but I want to hear it from you. That there's been these about 5 or 6 major climate shifts in the history of this planet, which is roughly 4.5 billion years old. And people that are somewhat climate change deniers or global warming deniers, they'll say, well, these have all happened before. This is inevitable. This is just the way it's got to go. To that, you say what?
Well, it's interesting. Along that line, John, people said, hey, what about the ice age? What did the dinosaurs start flatulating or something? What caused it? Look, there are a lot of things going on that create climate. Among them are the gases in the atmosphere. But also, our planet does not revolve around the sun or orbit the sun in the same shape. Turns out there are Milankovitch cycles. This was named after an Eastern European astronomer who noticed that the shape of Earth's orbit around the sun changes.
Right.
And the periodicity of those changes, the cyclicality of it, is on the order of tens of thousands of years. At the same time, we're wobbling on Earth's axis. Our axis relative to the plane of the sun changes from 21.5 degrees to as much as 25.5 degrees. In other words, we're tilting, and the reason that's significant and the change of our orbit around the sun is significant is because it exposes different parts of the planet to different amounts of sunlight in different eras. And the change usually occurs over tens of thousands of years, the astronomically driven changes. And it seems like they played a major role in the Earth's major ice ages. Now, there have been other things like that, like the asteroid that hit down in the Gulf of Mexico near the Yucatan. That thing 60 million years ago threw up so much debris in the atmosphere that we had kind of a nuclear winter. In fact, that's where that term comes from afterwards, and the planet cooled dramatically. So you can have events like that affect climate.
So Tom,
interesting?
Tom, hold on with that 1 second. I got to run and take a short break. We're going to come back and drill even deeper with that. And the one thing I've never understood is why don't they call hemorrhoids asteroids? I've never, Lady B, I've never. No? Okay. We'll take a quick time out. Back with more right here on WCPT.
You know that you can listen to Chicago's Progressive Talk on WCPT AM 820. Stream us live at WCPT820.com and on the TuneIn Radio app. Or you can ask Alexa, Siri, or Google to play WCPT from TuneIn. But now you have another option. We're simulcasting our programming overnight. 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. on WSBC AM 1240 for a clearer reception in and around the city. Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820. And now overnights on WSBC 1240 AM, where facts matter. Question: where were you on May 3rd, 2005? If you were listening to the radio, you may have heard the first day on the air for WCPT. On Saturday, May 3rd, WCPT is celebrating 20 years on the air with a big live broadcast from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. We'll be at Max and Benny's restaurant in Northbrook, and WCPT listeners can attend this special 4-hour broadcast. Al Sparks will kick off the celebration with the WCPT broadcast team. Richard Chu, Joan Esposito, Patty Vasquez, and Scott Duff, as well as surprise guests from our 20-year history. It's the WCPT 20th anniversary, and you're invited to come and celebrate with us. To register for this special event, go to WCPT.com and click on the WCPT anniversary banner. Seating is limited and will sell out quickly. Go to WCPT.com today to register. See you on Saturday, May 3rd from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. at Max and Benny's in Northbrook.
So spread the word that WCPT is just great.
Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. Filling in today for...
Oh, no worries. I can adjust. Lady B, it's all good. Tonight from 5 to 7, right when I finish up here, Patty Vasquez will be joined by Dems for Addison Township candidates Maria Vesey, Bobby Hernandez, and Titus Dare. Now, there's a great name, Titus Dare. Boy, oh boy. Transgender activist Ellie Krug, who hosts The Illegal Trans Woman on KTNF AM 590, the progressive voice of Minnesota. Nice to know that they have some progress way up north there. Yeah, hey there. Driving it home with Patty, weekdays from 5 to 7 p.m. Central on WCPT 820 AM right here. The Heartland Signal website, TuneIn, YouTube, and Facebook. Tom Skilling is joining me. We're talking about climate change and all those type of things. And Tom, one of the things that I mentioned about these other ice ages that have happened, these global warming trends and stuff like that, you're explaining these natural ways that it's taken place, but am I correct, at least a little bit or not? Let me know. That this human-induced climate change is what's rapidly picking things up. This is not a natural occurrence.
No, that's the big change. You know, people will come at you and say, hey, we've always had climate change on this planet, and we have. There's no question. What sets what's going on now apart from those natural climate changes, like the orbital-induced climate changes and the wobbling on our axis, is the speed with which it's happening. By some accounts, John, these changes are occurring at 10 times the speed of any that we've observed over the term of humans walking this planet. You know, think about it. This planet is 4.5 billion years old. Humans have been around in roughly the kind of condition we're in now for about 300,000 years.
Right.
And civilization's been around a lot shorter than that. The most recent ice age we have melted about 10,000 years ago is the general consensus. There have been others before that, before we even, or any creatures like us, walked the planet. So 10 times faster is how much faster this is occurring right now. And you know, it's interesting. We did a series on climate change. I went up to Alaska. I've been traveling up there since 1980. The changes in the ice up there are just stunning. The Arctic regions on the planet are warming 3 to 4 times faster than we are here in the mid-latitudes, and you really see it. But I was talking to a climatologist up there, Dr. Brian Brettschneider, and he was saying, you know, I've lived up here 25 years. I have a teenage daughter. He said, it's happening so fast up here, climate change, that my teenage daughter talks about the changes she's seen in her life in, for instance, the extent of the ice, you know, the icebergs and so forth, and the glaciers. And he said, you know, that's amazing. It used to take a couple of generations before you saw these changes. And, you know, one of the things, too, John, that's a problem with climate change and difficult for some folks to get their hands around is the fact you don't see evidence of it directly out the backyard window every single day. These occur mainly as these extreme weather events. And, boy, we're seeing those. I mean, you know, these hurricanes are amazing. There were 4 hurricane landfalls in Florida last year. One of them 2 years ago, Ian, was the second most expensive hurricane to occur in U.S. history, topped only by Hurricane Katrina. To this day, the insurance industry is reeling down there. They're still cleaning up after that one that hit southwest Florida and then tracked across the state. Florida homeowners are paying 4 to 5 times the flood insurance premiums they were if they can get insurance at all. And, of course, the insurance companies have pulled out of California, Los Angeles, after these wildfires. This is what's starting to happen. We're starting to see economic effects from these extreme weather events because these insurance companies that, along with the American taxpayer, have to pick up the bill on these things, are realizing it's not a good business model to be insuring all of these extreme weather, the cleanups after all these extreme weather disasters. So they're pulling out of the field.
You know, Tom, I say this every time I get a chance, not only on my podcast, but also on live radio, that I learned a lot about what I think is important when it comes to our relationship to the environment in 5th grade in science class. Like, we live in a giant biosphere. Everything stays inside the sphere. This stuff just doesn't go somewhere. I mean, we know about the Montreal Protocol, how all the nations signed that because the chlorofluorocarbons were eating away at the ozone layer, which is the protective layer of the planet. And just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. So when
no, absolutely.
Right.
And John, you know something else? This stratospheric ozone layer that was being worked away at by the chlorofluorocarbon propellants that you were talking about in aerosol cans before we banned them.
Yep.
You know, if you took the whole ozone layer up above the troposphere, the layer we live in, and brought it down here to ground level and exposed it to the pressure pressure we live in down here on Earth's surface, the entire ozone layer would only be 2 centimeters thick.
Oh, come on.
That's less. Yeah, that's less than an inch thick. And one of those molecules of chlorofluorocarbon take out 100,000 molecules of ozone. It's a very unstable gas. Wants to define,
So, Tom, you're saying about an inch or so is keeping us alive?
Yeah. And of course, when you get up into the thin upper reaches of the atmosphere, that's spread out over tens of thousands of feet.
Yeah.
But, of course, the air pressure up there, think about it. We're through half the mass of our atmosphere at about 18,000 feet. You go up to 10,000 feet, you're through about 3/4 of the mass of the atmosphere. It's above 10,000 feet that really you need supplemental oxygen, or at least be able to take it easy, because the air molecules are so spread out up there that we don't, when we breathe, get the amount of oxygen we need.
Tom, I really think a lot of people fell asleep in class over the years. I mean, come on. I mean, I don't know how you can get this kind of information and go, well, that's not true. I guess that's just confirmation bias, but that is what it is. Before I have to get rid of you in a few minutes, I don't mean get rid of, but let you go. You know how it works in this business. I was so excited about your AI piece on GN about argon.
Oh, my gosh. That's the Aurora exascale computer that's gone in there. It's taken 7 years to build. It covers the equivalent of 2 NBA basketball courts. It's in a 10,000 square foot facility, John. And that thing requires 44,000 gallons of recycled water to cool it off because it generates heat.
Right.
Now, this thing does, what do you get this? 2.5 billion mathematical operations per second. And that is impossible to get your hands around. But think of it this way. If you gave every human on Earth a computer and you told them, go to work, start computing, presuming they knew how to run the computer, at the end of 4 years, every human on Earth armed with a computer would do the number of calculations in 4 years' time that computer at Argonne in Lamont does in 1 second. And what will be done with that machine is they're going to model the human brain for the first time. They're going to look at the way cancer and other diseases spread through our body. They're going to look for new materials that will produce better batteries and hopefully get us away from some of these rare earth materials that we require and extend the range of batteries. They're going to look for new medicines. The fact that we came up with a COVID vaccine as fast as we did, something like 10 months, used to take a decade to develop a vaccine like that. They used the Oak Ridge National Laboratory supercomputer, which isn't even as fast as the one up here in Argonne. And there's a new breed of computer weather and climate forecast model, these AI or artificial intelligence models, which is showing great promise in forecasting with accuracy in an entirely different way. Right now we use Newtonian physics in our computer models to show how the atmosphere is going, where a storm's going to develop, how it's going to move. The computer learns by looking back at 50 years of data and then starts looking at numerical correlations between the development of the atmosphere moving forward in time. And it comes up It's coming up with a 12-day forecast in 3 minutes, which is showing skill scores that are about equivalent to the Newtonian physics models we use that take hours on the world's fastest computers. And with the time we save by using this new sort of AI model, the hope is that we'll be able to run whole ensembles. We run about 30 to 50 versions of our current computer models and average across them. And the way we come up with the different runs is we take the 6.3 billion weather observations that go into our computer models, and we reinterpret them slightly differently because we don't perfectly measure the atmosphere. And by slightly reinterpreting all this data and then feeding it into the models, we can adjust for inaccuracies in the way we've initially measured the atmosphere. And it turns out studies have shown if you run multiple forecasts like that, average them together, the accuracy is far better than the prediction from one model. Well, with these new exascale type computers, the hope is we'll be able, instead of running 30 to 50 versions of the models, we'll run thousands of them and be able to do this in a realistic time frame and make this available to human meteorologists who will then produce better and more accurate forecasts.
You know,
and
go ahead.
One of the hopes, John, is right now to see a tornado, we have Doppler radars that look at the wind fields inside thunderstorms. The hope is that we'll get down to developing models that predict the individual thunderstorms and then perhaps forecast an hour ahead of time which of those thunderstorms is going to go tornadic, and then be able to put out a tornado warning an hour or more ahead of time at some point down the road.
Saving lives.
The 11 minutes of time. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You know, two things pop into my head. Number one, I'm not a big fan of AI because I've only seen the nefarious applications of, cloning people and all the rest of this stuff, what they're doing. And that's all you really hear about. So when I watched your entire segment on the Argonne thing, and I thought, there's hope. This is a good thing.
Yeah. It is. The thing is, I asked them about that. I said, remember that sci-fi movie back in the 70s that showed this government computer that was supposed to prevent nuclear war? And the thing became so smart, it took over and said, hey, you humans, we don't need you. That's a real risk, John. And the AI developers will tell you, for one thing, we hope the people programming these machines teach them to love humans, because these machines are going to become brighter than we are, able to process more information. But if you use it the way they do at Argonne, which is not to produce a sentient computer that thinks on its own, but instead attack scientific issues like how do we make a better medicine and how do we make a better battery, you keep it away from that sort of developmental process that will perhaps threaten us somewhere down the road. Mm-hmm. But we're going to have to watch it. It'll have to be monitored, no question.
The great inventor Buckminster Fuller said, we're creating all the right technology for all the wrong reasons. But this is one time, I think, that, again, I'm watching this thinking this thing is, there may be hope in technology. I've never really thought it that way, Tommy. I just kind of poo-pooed all that. I think we got to save ourselves and we got to cut back here and change things here. But if this machine and others like it can give us the predictions we need to save ourselves from ourselves, I think it's a huge win.
Or how about to figure out how cancer is spreading through our bodies, how Alzheimer's is taking our minds away, how to make a battery that will produce a car that will recharge in the time it takes to put a tank of gas in, and therefore makes electric vehicles cheaper and also better and longer running. How about nuclear power without as much of this nuclear waste that we generate?
Right. Hey, Tom, can you stick for a second? I got to take one more little break. I know there's more to talk about here. Tom Skilling joining me on WCPT. And if you haven't figured out by this point, facts matter. Back after this.
WCPT Replay.
We're going to talk to Renato Mariotti. What are some of the things you would suggest folks do?
I think it's really important to actually get out there and volunteer and contribute and be on the front lines so that you're doing something, not just posting on social media. And I think it's also important in your own communities to be outspoken, to be an advocate, and to be helping candidates to try to make sure, because we're in less than 2 years, we're going to be right back here trying to undo some of this mess in a midterm election. ultimately having a defeatist attitude or an attitude where, well, we just, we might as well move to Canada or something like that. That's surrendering our country and millions of people who can't move to a fate that they don't deserve.
Keep listening to WCPT 820 because facts matter.
You're listening to WCPT 820. Here's the latest Chicago weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Regina Kroll. For this evening, mostly clear as we drop back to 37. Warmer Thursday, high of 59 and sunny. Then passing clouds come in for Thursday night as we bottom out around 48. Temperatures warm even more for Friday, high of 74, mostly sunny, but it will be windy. Showers and thunderstorms come in Friday night. Mostly cloudy, we dip back to 55. Showers and storms will linger into Saturday, too. Partly sunny and a high of 64. That's your latest Chicago weather update. Right now, it's 51 degrees.
This is Chicago's Progressive Talk, 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and online at WCPT820.com, where facts matter.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. Filling in today for Joan, Chicago media personality, John St. Augustine.
Yeah, man, I'm here. Should have had Tom do the weather update. Tomorrow on Chew's Views, Richard Chew will be here taking your calls and talking to Joe Ferguson, president of the Civic Federation, and Adam Mulvey. I've seen this guy in the news. You're going to want to tune into this. A 20-year Army veteran and former government employee who lost his job on account of the Doge firings. I have a different acronym for DOGE. Can't say it on the air. Lady B, she's shaking her head. Don't go there, John. I won't. He was Representative Brad Schneider's guest at Trump's recent joint address to Congress. Choose Views, weekdays from 6 to 8 a.m. Central on WCPT, Chicago's Progressive Talk for 20 years. Tom, when I have these conversations with you, I always think about, your early days. I think there was no way when you're doing television shows with a puppet that you could ever imagine, first of all, the career that you would have and this amazing technological advances, right?
Oh, my gosh. I tell the young people, we used to have, before COVID, we had an internship program. Unfortunately, it's been one of the victims of the COVID epidemic. They stopped the internship programs and they haven't restarted. But, I told these young people, I said, do you realize we are witnessing a revolution in this science? Louis Uccellini was head of the Weather Service, finishing his doctorate when I was up at the University of Wisconsin, which, by the way, is the birthplace of satellite meteorology in this country, up in Madison. But he used to say that, the numerical modeling, these computer models we work with, represent one of the top 10 achievements of science in the 20th century. The lives that have been saved, knowing where hurricanes are going, where flash floods are going to happen, what river level is going to be, where tornadoes are going to touch down, and all this kind of stuff, has been incredible. It's hard to quantify that. But, when I started, John, we had no operational satellite imagery. We had no computer models. We didn't have a buoy network. We didn't have mesonets. Those are automated observation stations. The satellite imagery we get was hadn't even been perfected at that point. And all this has come into being. And we have a look at this planet that we've never had before. We really have a fighting chance of figuring out what tomorrow's weather is going to be. Is it perfect? No, but it's better than it's ever been.
Yeah.
And,
how do you explain if possible, the popularity of things like the weather? I know people that sit and watch the Weather Channel all day.
Yeah.
And it's not even where they live. They're looking at weather. You put Jim Cantori out there in the middle of a hurricane and the ratings go up. What is this fascination we have, do you think, with the weather?
Well, think about it, John. We swim at the bottom of what amounts to a giant ocean of air. It presses on us to varying degrees as high and low pressures pass by. It affects our psychology, the way medicines work, whether we can go to work, if we work outside, how we dress. I mean, the weather is always at some level on somebody's mind. Of all the elements we put on television, the one story, when you got a big weather story that's going to affect every viewer and every listener of every radio and television station in America, is the weather. And it really, it shouldn't be surprising. Heck, we as a species sprang from the primordial oceans. We're 67% water.
Right.
If not more. So, it really, when you think about it, is not really surprising. I was reading a book recently about humans' affinities toward huge bodies of water like the ocean.
Right.
They can measure with MRIs which part of our brain is lighting up with activity and responding to external stimuli. And they find out that, bodies of water like our Lake Michigan and the ocean light up portions of our brain the way these bodies of water smell, appear, their color, their feel. It's just
we're drawn to the water.
Intimate relationship. Yeah.
So can you stick around for a couple minutes?
Sure.
So what I thought we would do is open the phone lines, because this kind of takes me back to our GN days where people would call in and ask for the weather. But we're not going to do that. I was fascinated. We're in Illinois. People say, what's the weather in French Lick, Indiana? I'm like, it's right next door. Look for yourself. But they wanted to hear it from you. So if you've been a fan, and you should see the text messages and things that Lady B's putting up for me, this guy's the most accurate meteorologist who's ever lived. Wow. Way to go, Tom.
Wow.
So if you want to have a question about climate or weather, if you played along, we would do that. If you want to give a buzz, it's 773-763-9278. If you have a question, comment, query, or idea, no complaints, for Tom Skilling, 773-763-9278. I know one of your escapes is Hawaii. So I bet most of your brain lights up when you go there. And where does it light up, and how does it light up different when you go to the great state of Alaska?
Well, I went to Alaska first in 1980, and I'll tell you why. I've always believed as a weather forecaster, you've got to understand the terrain over which the weather has traveled to get to where we are, where we live, to understand why the weather forms the way it does. So I always, I heard about these Arctic latitude, short winter days, long summer days, and the way they heat up differently. And in Alaska, you've got maritime air coming off the Gulf of Alaska and the Pacific Ocean fighting with continental air, and these mammoth storms develop. I remember standing in front of the maps up at college at the University of Wisconsin, one of my professors looking at this mammoth Gulf of Alaska storm, and he said, almost stream of consciousness, why do the best storms happen where I'm not around to watch them? And I thought, well, maybe I'm not as crazy as I thought it was, because it's not that we're a bunch of sadomasochists in meteorology. It's just that when nature puts together some extreme weather event, be it a tornado or a snowstorm or a cold wave or a heat wave, you kind of are interested in how nature's done that. And so I went up to Alaska with that in mind, and I kind of thought for a long time, John, I was going to retire up there eventually. But then I went to Hawaii, and another thing, I had that weight loss surgery.
Yes.
Hey,
folks, I just got
125 pounds.
I know. I just got to say this. You and I had breakfast in December, and I thought, unbelievable how well you look, Tom.
Oh,
and
John,
you work
it's
at
the
it.
Best thing. Yeah. Well, you know what? They went in there, and these gastric bypass, it's all done laparoscopically now. They don't cut you open. They go through 6 holes in your abdominal tract, and they tie, the procedure I had, they stapled the top of the stomach and divided the intestines. So you cut the storage area and the processing area, and the bottom line is you lose weight.
Right.
I was diabetic. I was morbidly obese. My father was in the same shape and had a massive stroke and spent a year in comatose. We weren't sure he'd ever come out, and he only survived 2 years beyond it. Never walked again, never ate normally. I was on the same track. So I figured I'm going to give it a shot. But I'll tell you what happened is a sidebar. Suddenly cold weather mattered to me because I didn't have all this padding. And so somehow Hawaii seemed a little, but Hawaii's fascinating. It's got like these microclimates driven by the terrain out there. Do you know the tallest mountain in the world is Mauna Kea, the volcano on the Big Island there. If you go from the bottom of the ocean to the top of that volcano, which is 13,800 feet above sea level, but it goes 10,000 feet down to the ocean, it's taller than Mount Everest, the tallest mountain in the world. So it's just fascinating to watch the weather and, of course, the ocean. I love the ocean, and I love the lake. I was walking along it yesterday and the day before in that beautiful 70-degree weather. So anyway, John, it all ties together in a strange and confusing way.
Absolutely. So let's go to the phones here before we jump off for a break in about 4 minutes. Mark's calling in from South Bend, Indiana. He's got a question about the weather. Mark, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mark.
Hi, welcome. Hey, Tom, it's a pleasure to get to talk. My reference is the Groundhog's Day blizzard of February 2nd, 3rd, 2011. There was that snow ban that extended from Green Bay, Wisconsin, Louisville, Kentucky, of a minimum of 10 inches of snow in that band. Chicago, I believe, was hit with that day of 21 inches, blizzard wind, thunder, lightning. I took infrared photographs when they came later of the intensity of that storm. And a guy who used to fly in the Air Force refueling, he says, Mark, it looks like those cloud tops were exceeding 50,000 feet. And I want to verify with you, is that the biggest North American storm? And there was also tornadoes and hurricanes all the way down to the Gulf Coast with that frontal system. Is that the biggest cyclops in North American history?
John, I don't think so, but I'll tell you something. You are absolutely right. When you get a mature winter cyclone like that, which is what we call these big low pressures, the warm sector will produce tornadoes. The cold sector will produce what we saw up here, blizzards, thunder, snow, and all the rest. What happens in the atmosphere is when you get very cold and very warm air right next to each other, you get a strong jet stream between them. And interestingly enough, the jet streams are not of uniform speed. They're pockets of strong winds, and they help set up the vertical motions that suck the air up into big clouds and can make thunder and lightning even in environments that aren't warm and 90 degrees, when it's snowing. Mm-hmm. And we had it all in that storm, 70-mile-an-hour winds. There was a 2-day forecast lead time on that storm. It was perfectly forecast by our models. And that was an extraordinary storm. And I would say something else, John. The cloud tops on that one wouldn't have been to 50,000 feet, but your friend is right. I mean, that was a doozy of a storm. There's no two ways about it.
Tommy, I can't remember what was going on in 2011, and you know exactly what was going on in 2011. Anyway, we're going to jump over to Donna in Rogers Park. She's got a question on climate change. Donna, welcome to WCPT.
Gilly?
There you are, Donna. Hello.
Hi, Donna. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine. Tom, let me tell you something. I never got to talk to you before while you were still at WGN, but I have to tell you, when I started listening to you several years ago, in fact, you graduated, I think, from college, or your career started the year I graduated from college. Was it 1978? Was that it?
74. I started professionally in 74. So, yeah, about the same time, Donna. Yeah.
Well, what happened was I always liked the weather, but you turned me on to the real love of weather. And the truth be known, when I would be listening to weather, I'd have everybody shut up around me. Don't talk. Tom is talking right now. Be quiet. Because the reason I loved you so much, everybody, all they wanted was, what's the temperature tomorrow? How cold is it going to be? How hot? What I loved about you, you gave the history, the statistics, the science. I mean, when you say the packed isobars, I used to get thrilled. I loved everything about your. I mean, you are the man. When I would tell people about Tom Stilling.
Hey, Donna. Donna.
Donna, keep it coming. I'll tell you, Donna. If I ever feel bad, I'm going to get your phone number.
Listen,
to say something.
I had to say,
Donna,
Tom is like the Elvis Presley of meteorology, is he not?
Do you know, guys, what the funny thing is? When I started, I used to scare the living daylights out of these news consultants. They said, you're too technical. You talk about jet streams. Nobody knows. I thought, people aren't dumb. This isn't brain surgery. I mean, when you look at the jet stream, you know where the weather is coming from, and it tells you a lot about where storms are going to develop. Donna, thank you. You made my day. Thank you so much. I had such fun, and I've always said I have the most loyal and fantastic listeners in the world, and there are some people who say, he goes on and on forever and ever and ever. But you know what? Ben Bradley, one of our reporters, used to do a bit about how he went down to the cafeteria when my show started to buy coffee or walked over to Starbucks, and I had time to get a coffee. But you know what? The people who, after a while, people said, well, maybe he's not as crazy as, some say he is. So thank you, Donna. That's really nice.
Hey, Tom, we'll take a quick time out. We just got a couple more phone calls, and I'll cut you loose, my friend. The reason I did this is I wanted to prove it wasn't an illusion back when we were working together 10 years ago, when the phone lines would light up just like they are now, like a Christmas tree, for people to talk to you, and you got fans all over the place. I just want to make sure that you were in on that. We'll take a short time out. Take care of the people that make this show possible. More after this on WCPT, where facts matter.
Excuse me, miss. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Can you recommend a bank that offers a full suite of commercial banking products along with excellent service?
Yes, ABOC.
What about a bank that has been in Chicago for more than 100 years and really understands the local business climate?
ABOC.
But I manage a labor union. Can you recommend a bank that really understands how labor unions operate and what banking products they need?
Again, ABOC. ABOC first opened its doors in downtown Chicago in 1922 and understands the local business climate better than anyone. ABOC was founded by labor unions and still has union employees and shareholders today, so they really understand how unions tick and how their needs may be different. But whether you're with a labor union or another type of business, whether you're large or small or something in between, ABOC will always make you feel like you're their most important customer. Visit ABOC.com to learn more.
Wow, thank you, random person on the street. I'm going to visit ABOC.com today.
Member FDIC.
This is a WCPT Veteran Minute. In the midst of World War II, a group of Native American soldiers known as the Code Talkers became silent heroes. The U.S. military faced challenge of secure communications on the battlefield, and these men, primarily from the Navajo tribe, were enlisted to develop an unbreakable code. Using their native language, which had no written alphabet, they transmitted vital messages that were indecipherable to enemy forces. The code proved to be an essential asset, particularly in the Pacific Theater, where it helped the Allies win crucial battles. The Code Talkers' courage and ingenuity saved countless lives and turned the tide of the war. Yet, their contributions remained largely unknown until decades later. The legacy of the Code Talkers stands as a testament to the strength, resilience, and valuable service of Native Americans during one of America's most devastating conflicts. This has been a WCPT Veteran Minute.
Because facts matter. You're listening to WCPT 820.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. Filling in today for Joan, Chicago media personality, John St. Augustine.
Joan will be back tomorrow this time slot. Her guests are Eric Zorn, the great writer from the Picayune Sentinel, Clay Risen, author of Red Scare, Blacklist, McCarthyism, and the Making of Modern America, and Casey Harrison, the political correspondent at the Nevada Courier Newsroom. Live, local, and progressive weekdays from 2 to 5 p.m. Central on WCPT, Chicago's progressive talk for 20 years. You've been listening to the Tom Skilling Show for the last almost hour, so the phone lines are totally lit up. Tommy, this is like old times for us, isn't it?
It's awesome. John, I just love working with you, but we always had fun. And don't we have marvelous listeners? My God.
Yeah.
It's just great.
It's amazing, amazing, amazing. So let's take these in order and see if we can knock these out before I got to cut you loose. So first up, Bernie is on the line. He's been waiting patiently for 11 minutes. Bernie, welcome to the show.
Bernie.
Yeah, I wanted to say what how you doing? I just wanted to say what my experience was. I was an air traffic controller in the Navy, and I used to. There was a catwalk around the tower, and I used to crawl out there with a spray bottle, and the weathermen used to walk out of a door a couple floors down. I used to spray the water on them, and they just couldn't understand it was raining.
Oh my word! Hey,
typical Navy guy.
Did you ever? Isn't that funny? I'll tell you, my uncle was a dentist in the Navy many, many years ago. But did you ever use a sling psychrometer? That's that couple of thermometers that you sling through the air to get the humidity and all. Did you ever do that when you were in the Navy?
Well, I was an air traffic controller.
So you didn't have to do that?
You didn't do
No, I mean, I worked in the tower.
You were in a tower, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Bernie, appreciate the call. I want to get the rest of these phone calls. I appreciate your time and your service, of course, and spraying the other guys.
That's awesome.
Hose them down a little bit. We're going to go to Steve in Des Plaines. Steve, welcome.
Hey, Tom, how you doing? Real quick,
good, Steve.
You're a Chicago icon. I met you many years ago. In God bless her heart, her memory, Allison Payne had a barbecue in the backyard down the street from, and you were helping her host a barbecue. I met you that night, and it was
One of the, one of the sweetest people, and I'm telling you, I don't know what happened there, but I'll tell you, that's a real tragedy. She was an amazing human being. It really was.
Yeah, it was sad, a young career and all that. But anyway, here's the question. Yeah. This question entails a lot of physics. Okay, here's the what. Now we on Earth, we are in a closed mechanical system. It's rules is by mechanical laws. Taking that logic, why isn't the weather always the same all the time?
Because of the rotation of our planet and also differential heating. Think about it. We have mountains, we have plains, we have different colored vegetation. All of this heats up differently. And we have water. 70+% of the planet is covered by water, which is the great thermostat in our planet, that and water vapor. So it doesn't heat the same way. If you've got a patch of bare ground and you've got a grassy surface next to it, they're heating differently, and they heat the air above it differently. And so that starts setting the stage for the atmosphere warming differently, and then rotated the planet. There was a guy at the University of Chicago who developed some of the models that we use. He used to have a pan of water he put on a turntable, and he put dry ice and a cake in the middle of it, little shallow collection of water in the pan, and then he heated the perimeter of this pan and turned on the turntable. And if you put drops of dye in the water there between this chunk of dry ice and the heated rim, you started getting wave patterns like the one we have in the atmosphere. And that's all the result of the fact that one part of that pan was heating of the water, and it was heating differently than another part. And then you add Coriolis, the force that results from the planet turning, and you get weather systems that spin. If the planet didn't spin, if we weren't rotating on the axis, the wind would always blow from the North Pole down to the equator, from the north all the time. It would blow from the North Pole down to the equator. It would rise as it's heated down there, and then in the upper air return to the North Pole, where it would sink again and start blowing in from the south. But because we turn on our axis, this spins up all these weather systems we see, and that's why we have, such a variation. And then the planet is not the same colored surface, same elevation. Every little part of our planet heats differently than somewhere else, and that sets up the differential heating that sets our weather systems in motion.
I should have used that little turntable thing in my science fair project. I think I'd have got an A on that.
You would have.
That would have got an A on that. Let's get to some other calls. We're going to try and finish this up. There's a couple more online. We're going to go to Earl in Hyde Park, talking about jet stream and climate change. Earl, welcome.
Hey, guys, thank you very much. And, Tom, I want to give you a quick little story. I used to talk about weather with all my workers and family, and they would all ask me, when the hell did I get my degree in meteorology? It was all because I was listening to you. So I want to thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Steve. That's very nice.
And my question for you is, really, I'm going to put it in line with what you just got through talking about from north to south and everything. What do you think is going to happen to the atmosphere when all of the ice melts on the North Pole, and what effect is going to have on our weather patterns, or if we're going to have a weather pattern? Because I've heard that some people speculate that it's going to affect the ocean currents too. So I just want you to reflect on that, and I'll hang up.
Boy, that's a great question. Look, it's already doing that. The ice that's melting in Greenland is flooding the North Atlantic with fresh water. Fresh water is less dense than salt water, and salt water is, the water through which the Gulf Stream is running from Florida all the way up to Europe and bringing warm air from the tropics up to the north latitudes up in the Scandinavia and the British Isles and all the rest. And there are signs that the Gulf Stream, one of these ocean currents you mentioned, is running the slowest it has at any point in the last 1,000 years. And there's going to be further change. There'll be a host of changes. If we start melting all of the ice in the Arctic, And we'll probably do it during the summer. Then in the winter, it'll get cooler, and there'll be some ice redeveloping, but it won't develop the way it does now. That's going to change. Again, we get down to that fact that one area gets warmer than another on the planet, heats differently. You're going to change the way we heat this planet. That's going to alter jet streams and where storm tracks are and how precipitation lays out. So there are myriad changes. And some say, there are tipping points that we may go beyond, where we start developing a weather regime that's out of control if it gets bad enough. So mammoth changes, and that's what our climate models attempt to look at. What will happen if and when the ice melts up there?
Well, let's get to our let's get to our last caller here real quick. Thomas in Lincoln Park has a question. Thomas, welcome.
Well, thank you. First-time caller. Boy, you're an icon, Tom. This is my question. When I was at Ogden, you're welcome. When I was at Ogden School and elementary kids many, many decades ago, the teacher made us every day look at the weather map on page 12 or whatever it was, 30, I don't know. And so we cut it up, we brought it in, it was good. And this is what she emphasized, and she was smart. She said, always look at the barometric pressure. Look at those bars, those lines across the Midwest, the ISO bars. That's going to tell you when the weather's going to change, and it's very important. You don't know anything unless you look at the ISO bars. You know what? I don't see those at all anymore. Why is that, Tom?
I don't know. You know what? It scares the devil out of these news consultants. When I used to put isobars on the map, they said, that just clutters up the map. And I said, a lot of people, they're still going to watch the weather if you put isobars up there. But for those who know what to make of the isobars, and what they tell us is how the winds are blowing. Nobody has to put into words what these, when they're packed, the pressure gradient's tight, the winds are going to blow. It tells you, anybody who knows the first thing about isobars and meteorology will look at that and get yet another level of information from the graphic they're seeing. I don't know why they don't show it. When I was a little kid, I used to watch a lady by the name of Gloria Ocon on WPIX New York. I lived at the time out and she put isobars on her weather map. This is back in like the 1950s because we moved out here to the Midwest. My family did in the 1960s. And I love that. But you're absolutely right. The isobars tell you a world of things about the wind and all. And that's why we plot them.
Maybe we can bring those back at some point. Tommy, I cannot thank you enough for sticking for almost an hour. I knew this was going to happen. It's always a thrill to spend time with you, and I know that the people listening have come away better for their time.
John, I'll tell you, it's always fun talking to you and to your listeners. What marvelous questions. And, John, happy Wednesday to you. I'm telling you, we're getting ever closer to the real spring weather that hangs on for a while. We've got to watch this storm later in the week. We might have some interesting thunderstorms around here Friday night. But it's going to get warm Friday. But
I can do that. I can do warm.
Yeah.
All right, Tommy.
Anytime. You know what, John, you got to tell your listeners sometime about your interactions with John Denver years ago. That's a story unto itself.
It is. It's where it all started for me, that's for sure. Listen, my friend, I hope we can catch up at La Villa some point and have a little garlic toast together, huh?
Oh, that's a marvelous restaurant. I love La Villa. Hey, John, great talking to you, and great talking to your listeners. Take care.
Thank you, my friend. WCPT back with more right after this.
St. Patrick's Day begins March 10th at Max and Benny's restaurant in Northbrook. Don't wait until March 17th to get your North Shore's best corned beef and cabbage. Stop in beginning March 10th for lunch or dinner. Dine in or carry out. Meals come with red potatoes and carrots. Max and Benny's has catered meal packages to take out or eat in. You can go to maxandbennys.com to check out their special St. Patrick's Day menu. And don't forget Max and Benny's special decorated cookies for St. Patrick's Day. Max and Benny's, open 7 days a week for great deli, soups, sandwiches, and dinners. Max and Benny's does catering with fish, deli, and delicious homemade dessert trays. Max and Benny's also has a special event space for over 100 people for catered events, parties, and special occasions. And Max and Benny's is your headquarters for all your Passover meals and seders. Call Max and Benny's today to reserve your space for St. Patrick's Day. 847-272-9490. That's 847-272-9490.
Stop struggling to get your job posting on other job sites. Indeed's sponsored job feature helps you stand out and hire fast. Start at Indeed.com/credit.
AP News, I'm Haya Panjwani.
The Education Department's Civil Rights Branch is losing nearly half its staff. That's amid President Donald Trump's administration laying off and effectively gutting an office that already faces a backlog of thousands of complaints from students and families across the nation. The AP's Mariah Ballingett.
President Donald Trump has pledged to dismantle the Education Department. And recently, the department announced that it is laying off more than 1,300 employees. That, along with other cuts, means that the department will be about half the size it was when Trump took office. It handles more than $1 trillion in student loans and grants, and there are nearly 43 million Americans who have them. It also oversees billions of dollars in funding for K-12 schools. And finally, it ensures that the civil rights of students are being safeguarded. So when a student with a disability is being denied accommodations or a Latino student is facing racist harassment, the department steps in and makes things right. Advocates are really concerned that the department won't be able to fulfill its duties and that ultimately it's students who will end up paying the price.
During a meeting with Irish Prime Minister Michael Martin, President Trump says his tariffs are aimed at righting past wrongs.
The United States of America is going to take back a lot of what was stolen from it by other countries and by, frankly, incompetent U.S. leadership. Grossly incompetent.
There's a new lawsuit against a popular seafood company.
Lawyers representing 4 Indonesian fishermen say the fishermen were beaten and trapped on vessels that were part of the global supply chain that provides tuna to Bumblebee Seafoods. The lawsuit against the canned seafood giant accuses it of knowingly benefiting from forced labor. Their lawyer says it is believed to be the first such case of forced labor at sea brought against a U.S. seafood company and accuses Bumblebee of violating the Trafficking Victims Protection Act. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
This is AP News. Mahmoud Khalil is the face of President Donald Trump's crackdown on campus protests. AP correspondent Julie Walker.
Former Columbia University grad student Mahmoud Khalil will be in ICE custody at least into next week as the Trump administration tries to deport the green card holder over pro-Palestinian campus protests. Khalil's lawyer Bahir Azmi.
The government has basically admitted that they're punishing him for his views that are contrary to the government's views.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio at an unrelated event.
This is not about free speech. This is about people that don't have a right to be in the United States.
Khalil was moved to federal detention in Louisiana. Still, hundreds of supporters were both outside and inside court in Manhattan, including actor Susan Sarandon. Julie Walker, New York.
I'm Haya Panjwani, AP News.
This is 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Now, your WCPT 820 weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Regina Kroll. For this evening, mostly clear as we drop back to 37. Warmer Thursday, high of 59 and sunny. Then passing clouds come in for Thursday night as we bottom out around 48. Temperatures warm even more for Friday, high of 74, mostly sunny, but it will be windy. Showers and thunderstorms come in Friday night. Mostly cloudy, we dip back to 55. Showers and storms will linger into Saturday, too. Partly sunny and a high of 64. That's your latest Chicago weather update. Right now, it's 52 degrees.
Remember when you get to work to hop over to WCPT820.com or the TuneIn Radio app and stream The Stephanie Miller Show. Weekdays 8 to 11 a.m. on Chicago's Progressive Talk, where facts matter. Hey Google, play WCPT.
Streaming Chicago's Progressive Talk from TuneIn.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. Filling in today for Joan, Chicago media personality, John St. Augustine.
Back with you on WCPT. Coming up on May 3rd, tickets are on sale, I should say, for May 3rd anniversary broadcast at Max and Benny's Restaurant, Deli, and Bakery. What a combo. Restaurant, deli, and bakery. You never have to leave the place. In Northbrook, Hal Sparks, Joan Esposito, Richard Chu, Patty Vasquez, and Scott Duff will all be there broadcasting live from 11 a.m. till 3 p.m. with special guests. You never know. Learn more and get your tickets by visiting heartlandsignal.com/anniversary. Hurry up. They're going to go quick. Go get them now before they're gone. So my thanks again to Tom Skilling. Tom, terrific. We call him in the biz. He's just a fantastic guy. And every time I talk to him, whether it's privately or in public, like with a microphone in front of me, I always learn something new from him. And I think that's what life's all about. At least it should be, in my opinion. You know, maybe I'm an anomaly. I don't think so. Lady B's sitting there telling me about the late, great Dick Kay and how much she learned from him being around him. And there's this certain people that when they're talking, you know it's right. Then there are other people when they're talking, it ain't right. So I am going to return a little bit to this VA thing because I didn't finish up what I wanted to start, what I started out with almost 2 hours ago. And just a quick reminder, at the 5:30, Jennifer Weigel will be on the show with me. She's calling in. She has a one-woman show starting. I think it's in April at some point. And she'll be talking about that among other things. But listen, I got to roll back to this veterans thing because it is something that sits on me all the time. Oftentimes we have, we see the news, right? And it's somebody else over there's problem. This is all very much removed, I think, from our personal experiences, much like Tom was talking about the weather. So here in Chicago, it's a very nice day. It's a little warmer than it usually is. It has been for the last couple of days. And people go, it's a little bit warmer than it usually is, but then they go about their business. But on the other side of the planet, there are things happening that we're not privy to or we don't see it. So we figure, it doesn't exist. But then when you have problems in your own backyard, then they exist. I did a Earth Matters with Bill Curtis a few years ago, and it talked about the oil spill, the BP oil spill. And the CEO of BP at the time said it was just a really little spill in a very large ocean, as if that part of the ocean didn't matter. It's that kind of mindset that's the problem. And I always say, if people took as much care of the surroundings of the planet as do for their lawn. We spend billions of dollars of care on our lawn every year to make it perfectly look green and good and all coiffed and all that stuff. And I do it myself. I never put down stuff that is bad in runoff. A lot of problems in the environment come from the runoff from all these chemicals we use to make our lawns look really nice. But if we took that same mentality about how we take care of this little plot of land we have, whether it's your front yard or backyard, and on the way here to the station today, all the lawns are starting to get a little bit more green. People are starting out doing things. That's really good. That's called stewardship. That means taking care of what you have. If that can be expanded into other areas and your consciousness can broaden itself a little bit about these challenges, then things look a little bit different. And one of the most challenging parts of this, and I don't think Tom would have had an answer for it at this point because he's more of a research guy, is that what do you do about all this? And to me, the first step is having a conscious awareness that things are changing. If you're in denial of it, then just go stand off to the corner. We're done. But if there's a possibility that you're changing your mind, you're trying to learn something new, and I'm only half kidding when I say about everything I learned about the planet was in 5th grade science from Mr. Andler. It's true only to a certain point. I've made it my business to learn more and more about things. So when you run into people who think they know everything about everything but haven't done anything, it's dangerous. And if you listen to them, it's even worse. So what's going on with the VA to me is in those veins. So you're chopping off and lopping off excess, non-essentials. And that is not determined by anybody in any way, shape, or form that's accurate. From all reports, we're just lopping and chopping them off. And as I said, just take your time, go over to YouTube. They should just call it MeTube, right? But go over to YouTube and look at all these videos of people who didn't think it could happen to them and they're gone, whether you're a veteran or other government worker. And the thing that I think people forget is, it's all great to make a smaller government. Most of the people that say we need a smaller government all work in the government. And so in all of that, when you're taking away someone's livelihood and not leaving them any recourse for a bridge from unemployment to their next job, not good. There's nothing American about that. We're supposed to be taking care of each other. And I don't think we do a very good job of that sometimes. In many ways, of course, VA is a natural target for reform. I mean, it's a behemoth bureaucracy with roughly 480,000 employees and some 90,000 contracts. There's been a documented history of scandals and waste, no question, just like every other. Listen, for those of you who think that private is better, let's just go to the insurance agency industry. I was talking with Matt out front, who's working on some stuff with insurance, and we were talking about this back and forth. That why is it so difficult to get some coverage? Why can't you get the treatments you need? It's private. It's a regular insurance company. They're in business to make money. They have shareholders and stockholders. So the less they spend, the more they make. So when you start privatizing everything, that's the route we're going to go. I don't think that's a good idea. Whoever said the government was in business to be a business was wrong. It's about service, and that costs money. That's why we pay taxes. You may not be 100% behind all the ways we spend our tax money or they spend our tax money, but that's open for debate. That's what politics used to be. How do we do this better? I wish I would have pulled it up. I don't have it with me, I don't think. I saw this blurb online about how the Republican Party was the year I was born in 1958. It's a 190. It's not even a 180. It's a 190 from what it is now, about fiscal responsibility and helping out those who are less fortunate. And all the things that the grand old party used to stand for are long gone. But anyway, this bureaucracy, as some call it, we call it the Veterans Administration, treats 9.1 million veterans, provides critical medical research, and according to some studies, offers care that's comparable or better than many private health systems. Let me just give you a little bit insider stuff from me. My daughter is a 2-time kidney transplant recipient. I gave her a kidney when she was 13, and that was an easy 2-foot putt for me. I mean, I was the guy that was the most natural, compatible person to do that. I did it without reservation. People ask me if I had any, after effects. I said, yeah, I just kind of leaned to the right a little bit more than I used to, where my other kidney used to be. But she did really well with that until 2018. Then she went into difficulty. She was on home dialysis for almost 2 years, I think. And really a miracle. She went to a woman went to a Hawks game. Let me get this right. A woman from Kenosha went to the Blackhawks game at the stadium, saw a sign for someone who needed a kidney, not my daughter, called that number. She was not a match for that person, but her name went into the hopper, and turns out she's a perfect match for my daughter, all because she went to a hockey game. So I've been dealing with insurance agencies. Now, she's a 36-year-old young woman doing very well. Her health is great. But over the years, I've dealt with insurance companies left and right constantly, and it was always a battle. Does it have to be a battle to get a kidney transplant when you're 12 or 13? It shouldn't be. I don't know how many referrals we need. So, listen, I can tell you that dealing with health insurance and insurance companies isn't the cakewalk they make it out to be if it's privatized. So sometimes a government-subsidized, government-run healthcare, especially for the veterans, is not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. We heard people calling earlier that have been to Himes and always have these great experiences. I'm right in line with that. They're fantastic over there. Now it's going to be less than, because we're chopping 1,000 people off their docket. And that means all the services are going to change. And if it may be efficient on a spreadsheet, it looks good on a spreadsheet, but in real time, now you're asking one person to do the work of 2. How does that work? It doesn't. It just doesn't in my book. So while the VA is one of the most politically sensitive departments in the government, serving a constituency, easy for you to say, a population courted heavily by the Republicans, including the current president, he made overhauling the agency a talking point since he started in 2016. Let me just see if I can find this real quick to interject it. I got more paper here than I probably should have. Just as a point of history, if you don't believe me, go look it up on the wiki or wherever you find your resources. He made this a talking point in 2016 in his campaign. The current president registered as a Republican in Manhattan in 1987. Since that time, he's changed his party affiliation 5 times. 5. In 1999, he changed his party affiliation to the Independence Party of New York. It didn't work out. In August of 2001, he changed his party affiliation to being a Democrat. Didn't work out for him. In September of 2009, he changed his party affiliation back to the Republican Party. And in 2011, he changes to no party affiliation as an independent. And then in 2012, he returned to the Republican Party. He told Wolf Blitzer at CNN for all these movements, he said, in many cases, I probably identify more as a Democrat. It just seems that the economy does better under Democrats than the Republicans. Now, and I wish I could do an imitation, but I can't. Now it shouldn't be that way. But if you go back, I mean, it just seems that the economy does better under Democrats. This is President Trump talking to Wolf Blitzer on CNN. But certainly we had some very good economies under Democrats as well as Republicans. But we've had some pretty bad disasters under Republicans as well. The usual kind of fodder that's bouncing all over the walls. But the man changed his party affiliation 5 times. The reality star always looking for the spotlight. That's what I see. And he's brought a guy in, Elon Musk, to start chopping and slicing and dicing, and a bunch of 19 and 20-year-olds digging into our data. I'm not good with any of this. And if you are, I don't know what to tell you. So now with the VA Secretary Doug Collins vowing a much deeper round of cuts, eliminating some 80,000 jobs out of the system that serves 9.1 million veterans, some Republican lawmakers are warning that the tumultuous process risks undoing recent progress. So nice to know that there are some Republicans who think this might not be a good idea. I mentioned earlier that as a veteran, I always get these emails from the VA, and one of them had a video of Secretary Collins. And if you've not seen this, I wanted you to hear it, and maybe we'll take a call on it. So, Lady B, please.
Hey, everybody. Look, I've always promised you I was going to shoot straight with you, and you're going to always hear it from me. Well, I got a bit longer message for you today, so just bear with me because you'll want to hear what I'm going to say. The VA has been a punching bag among veterans, Congress, and the media for decades. Things need to change. We owe America's veterans and the hundreds and thousands of excellent VA employees solutions. For many years, veterans have been asking for a more efficient, accountable, and transparent VA. This administration is finally going to give the veterans what they want. President Trump has a mandate for generational change in Washington, and that's exactly what we're going to deliver at the VA. We're going to make the department work better for the veterans, families, caregivers, and survivors we are charged with serving. And here's how we're going to do it. In response to President Trump's Department of Government Efficiency and Workforce Optimization Initiative, VA is conducting a department-wide review of its organization, operations, and structure. Central to these efforts is a pragmatic and disciplined approach to eliminating waste and bureaucracy, increasing efficiency, and improving health care, benefits, and services to veterans. This will be a thorough and thoughtful review based on input from career VA employees, senior executives, as well as the top VA leaders. Our goal is to reduce VA employment levels to 2019 in-strength numbers, roughly 398,000 employees, from our current level of approximately 470,000 employees. Now that's a 15% decrease. We're going to accomplish this without making cuts to health care or benefits to veterans and VA beneficiaries. VA will always fulfill its duty to provide veterans, families, caregivers, and survivors the health care and benefits they have earned. That's a promise. And while we conduct our review, VA will continue to hire for more than 300,000 mission-critical positions to ensure health care and benefits for VA beneficiaries are not impacted. There are many people complaining about the changes we're making at the VA. But what most of them are really saying is, let's just keep doing the same thing at the VA has always done. No, not going to happen. The days of kicking the can down the road and measuring VA's progress by how much money it spends and how many people it employs rather than how many veterans it helps are over. Here's just one example. We're conducting a comprehensive review of the VA's 90,000 contracts, which are worth more than $67 billion. After reviewing roughly 2% of those contracts, we were able to cancel nearly 600 non-mission critical or duplicative agreements that will save the department roughly $900 million. Just imagine how much more we'll be able to save after we review the rest of VA contracts. The money we're saving by eliminating non-mission critical and duplicative contracts is money we're going to redirect to veteran-facing health care, benefits, and services, resulting in massive improvements in customer service and convenience. Improving services to the veterans is exactly why the VA exists. That is what everyone, Congress, the media, and VA employees should be focused on. There have been a lot of news coverage regarding recent layoffs at the VA. Now, we regret anyone who loses their job, and it's extraordinarily difficult for me, especially as a VA leader, and your secretary to make these types of decisions. But the federal government does not exist to employ people. It exists to serve people. At the VA, we are focused on serving veterans better than ever before, and doing so requires changing and improving the organization. Look, the VA was never perfect, and it will never be perfect, but we can and will make it better. When we find problems, we will fix them. We will communicate what we are doing to the public. That's what I'm doing right now. But we'll be making major changes, so get used to it. Right now, VA's biggest problem is that its bureaucracy and inefficiencies are getting in the way of customer convenience and service to veterans. As I have said before, we owe American veterans and hundreds of thousands of amazing employees solutions. And mark my words, that is what we will deliver.
Mark my words. The reason I had Lady B play that today is if they go back on any of what he said, you heard it here first. I don't know if you've ever heard this. Have you heard this before? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is an email that I got from the Veteran Administration, had this video in it. I asked her to pull the audio, so you heard it here today, that they're going to do all these wonderful, great things without changing the services at all, not pushing back on anything, and elevating it to a whole new, shining in this, city on the hill level. Let's see it. I don't know how you cut back on staff and increase service. I just don't see it. And when he said it's not here to employ people, well, that's what runs the business. That's what runs the organization, whether it's private or nonprofit. It doesn't matter. People are the business. People are the service, no matter what fraction you're in. So I don't know that I'm willing to give this guy much latitude, but at least he came out and said it. It was something fairly coherent, so I could get behind on that. Among the 2,400 employees fired from the VA since Mr. Trump's inauguration are workers who purchase medical supplies, schedule appointments, and arrange rides for patients to see their doctors. Many are veterans themselves. All were probationary employees, meaning they were relatively new on the job and had fewer legal protections. Some may be reinstated pending court action, which you're going to hear about in a second from Senator Duckworth. But I just want to go on record and say, great. He came out and said they regret these firings. You know what's really regrettable? Not giving these people that you're cutting loose unemployment. That's what the problem is. Great. You want to slim it down, trim it up? Fantastic. Do what's right and give them an umbrella and a trampoline underneath themselves to move forward. They were fired with cause, which means they didn't do their job, and there's no way that's accurate. Tomorrow morning on Richard's show, you're going to hear from this guy, Adam Mulvey, who was a 20-year Army veteran, former government employee, lost his job from the Doge firings. He had 5-star reviews, and they cut him loose. So it's not adding up here, kids. It's just not adding up. In 2009, former President Barack Obama signed an executive order that started a government-wide initiative to hire more veterans because back then they said we didn't have enough people working at the VA to make the VA work. So President Obama did that in 2009. Veterans have served and sacrificed in the defense of our nation, he said. When they complete their service, we must do everything in our power to assist them in re-entering civilian life and finding employment. Please run Senator Duckworth's clip, Lady B.
You say that Trump and Musk have fired more veterans than any other administration in our nation's history. How many veterans do you think have been fired?
Well, Jake, I think at least 6,000 roughly. If you look at the number of people who have been fired, multiply it by the 30% number, that gets you to a very conservative estimate of 6,000. It's probably much higher than that, especially in certain agencies like the Department of Veterans Affairs. And that number continues to rise as they fire more and more federal employees.
What exactly would your legislation do?
My legislation would allow veterans to get their jobs back. It would reinstate them going back effective January 20th of this year. We're also right now working on making sure that they also get back pay from the time that they receive their severance.
Your bill is co-sponsored by several other Democrats in the Senate. Have any Republicans expressed any interest in what you're trying to do?
We can't seem to get any Republicans to respond, but we'll continue to push them. There are veterans on the other side of the aisle, and certainly I have never heard a single one of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle say that they don't support veterans. If anything, they boast about supporting veterans, so now is a chance for them to do so. They can stand up and support our veterans who serve our country in the federal service.
Regarding the VA, you have expressed outrage over the administration's cuts as well as plans to downsize the workforce, cuts of 80,000 jobs. Tell us more about that.
Well, Jake, veterans have been made a promise by the American people that we will care for them once they serve our nation. And remember, Jake, we just passed a PACT Act a couple years ago that allowed funding for programs that help veterans who suffered from toxic substances like burn pits and the like. And these veterans are new into the system. We encouraged them to enter the system. We finally, in a bipartisan way, passed funding to hire more people to take care of these veterans. And those new people are now all probationary employees because they've been hired within the last 2 years. And so those are the ones who are most likely being laid off, on the front lines of being laid off. And so veterans are going to find themselves waiting longer for care. We already hear about veterans having had their surgeries canceled or postponed, longer wait times for caregivers. These are people who family members who care for disabled veterans are not being able to get the support they need from the caregivers hotline. We are already seeing those effects, and I don't want us to go back to the bad old days where veterans, like the Vietnam veterans, were dying waiting for their claims to be processed. But that's where we're headed under the Trump administration right now.
So there was, under Bill Clinton, a big effort to reduce the size of the federal workforce. It was done quite differently. But how do you respond to when Republicans or others say Elon Musk is just doing a different version of that? The government's too big.
Well, the problem is they're taking a chainsaw and they're cutting across the board. And you're seeing what's happening is that they're having to reinstate some people with great disruption. I mean, air traffic controllers, Jake, air traffic controllers in the Northeast region were sent the fork in the road letter encouraging them to quit. We had people who worked on the Veterans Crisis Hotline were also laid off and had to be reinstated. I was able to get 2 of those folks reinstated myself. And you're seeing that they're having to, they laid off the people who were in charge of our nuclear arsenal, for crying out loud. So it shows that they don't know what they're doing. They're taking a chainsaw to the federal workforce, and it's putting Americans in danger. It's putting our veterans in danger. And frankly, there are better ways to reduce federal spending. I am all aboard for reducing federal spending. In fact, I successfully passed many pieces of legislation that cut defense spending by billions of dollars. And yet the way forward is not to go through and cut NIH funding that's money that's going into universities that are conducting research programs to end severe diseases that Americans suffer from.
So much to unpack, so little time. My thanks to Senator Duckworth. I was in communication with her office over the last couple of days. She wanted to be on the show. She's a little busy trying to fight for things that shouldn't have to be fought for. So I understand this. So she recommended that I air this clip. That was her with Jake Tapper recently on CNN. And, part of this for me, I just got to call it what it is. If you had somebody that was a veteran or somebody who, you can kind of roll out and say, I'm working with the VA to get this done, but you got Elon Musk. For all this money that they're saving, the guy's got billions of dollars in government contracts. I mean, come on, the reality show is rolling out right in front of your faces, and you're not doing anything about it. I'm talking about the other side of the aisle here. And just be real clear, I've said this on the show before. I've been in some ways kind of politically forced into this corner because I don't want to be talking about this stuff. I'd rather be talking with Tom Skilling about hot dogs, Cubs games, and go to the beach. But this is where we're at. You got to call it what it is. And as bad as this BS is from Musk about all these cuts and somehow he's this great guru, he isn't. He's a draft dodger from South Africa who got a Canadian passport to get out of the country so he can get away from things. So he's going to be the guy that's in charge of handling this stuff for the veterans who already served. So as bad as all that is, he called Senator Mark Kelly, as you know, highly decorated Navy pilot, an astronaut, a traitor for his support of the Ukraine over Russia. Elon Musk calling Mark Kelly, astronaut, highly decorated Navy pilot, a traitor. So as I listened to that clip from Senator Duckworth saying that they have zero support from the Republican side of things, and so our veterans over there for this, it's all mouth candy at this point. I don't care how many times you say veterans are this and veterans are that and Veterans Day this. It's all mouth candy until you put your money where your mouth is. And these, on the other side, they need to get this done. These people were let go in a way that was, in my opinion, was not only unethical, but not legal. And it needs to be rectified. So my thanks to Senator Duckworth for her efforts on all of that. I have about 97 pieces of paper here I'm not going to get to because Jennifer Weigel is going to come in and she's going to shift gears here. But the last thing I will say, maybe not the last thing. We'll see how long I can before I can't help myself. I've been thinking about this for a week knowing I'm coming in here. The current president ran on America First. That was his whole billboard, that we're going to all get behind America First. We are the first. It's the first time we've ever been on the Human Rights Watch list. Right up there with Afghanistan and the Congo. That's where we're at. More after this on WCPT, where facts matter.
Do you keep putting off that much-needed dental work? You know, that back molar that zings whenever you drink something cold, or that old loose crown that migrates up and down, like a yo-yo every time you eat? This is Dr. Anna Pellick from Total Dentistry and Palatine, and procrastination keeps me very busy. A simple filling becomes a root canal, or that chipped tooth breaks again and now it becomes a bridge or an implant. Time is the enemy, and dental problems don't get better on their own. So if you procrastinate because of anxiety, we have solutions. If you procrastinate because of cost, We work with insurance plans and have easy payment options. And if you procrastinate because you're too busy, we have early 6 a.m. appointments, late evening, and Saturday appointments, and even one-day treatment. So now that I've eliminated most excuses for not seeing us, stop procrastinating and join the many who tell us, why did I ever wait so long? So give us a call at 847-358-2477 or visit us at totaldentistry.org. Total Dentistry, a general dental practice like no other.
Oh no, stomach issues again?
Stomach issues? Who are you? Your pancreas. I could be the real reason for your diarrhea, gas, bloating, stomach pain, or loose oily stools.
I thought it was my stomach.
People often do, but any of these symptoms could mean having a condition called exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI. With EPI, the pancreas doesn't release enough enzymes to break down food, but EPI is manageable. Use the symptom checker on identifyepi.com and speak with your doctor. That's identifyepi.com. Sponsored by AbbVie.
I'm Jessica Ettinger, CNBC. Wall Street, mixed. It was a volatile day for stocks today. Both Europe and Canada placed retaliatory tariffs on the U.S. The Dow in the red, down 82 points, extending its losses. It was led lower by shares of Procter & Gamble, down almost 3%. The S&P 500 index was in the green, up 27 points, 0.5%. The NASDAQ popped higher as investors bought up tech shares. The NASDAQ was up 212 points, 1.25%. The major averages are all lower, though, for the week, the month, and the year. NVIDIA shares were higher today, up 6.5%, and Tesla shares popped up 7.5%. Airline shares fell on weaker demand and what may be a consumer travel slowdown. Target and Walmart shares also slipped as investors worry that uncertainty means consumers will pull back their spending. Jessica Ettinger, CNBC.
Hear the CNBC business updates each weekday at 9:30, 12:30, and 4:30. Now your WCPT 820 Chicago weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Regina Kroll. For this evening, mostly clear as we drop back to 37. Warmer Thursday, high of 59 and sunny. Then passing clouds come in for Thursday night as we bottom out around 48. Temperatures warm even more for Friday, high of 74, mostly sunny, but it will be windy. Showers and thunderstorms come in Friday night. Mostly cloudy, we dip back to 55. Showers and storms will linger into Saturday, too. Partly sunny and a high of 64. That's your latest Chicago weather update. Right now, it's 52 degrees.
This is Chicago's Progressive Talk, 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and online at WCPT820.com, where facts matter.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. Filling in today for Joan, Chicago media personality, John St. Augustine.
It's been great being with you on WCPT, where facts matter. Joan will be back tomorrow. Coming up in just about a half hour from 5 to 7 p.m., Patty Vasquez. I did say Patty, right? Thanks. I did say that. Sometimes, I've been doing this so long, I'm wondering, did I just say something? Or is this rehearsal? Lady B, is the mic on? I don't even know anymore. Anyway, Patty Vasquez will be joined by Dems for Addison Township candidates Maria Visi, Bobby Hernandez, and Titus Dare. If a guy ought to have his own show, it's Titus Dare. I love his name. And transgender activist Ellie Krug, who hosts The Illegal Trans Woman on KTNF AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. Yeah, hey there. Driving it home with Patty, weekdays from 5 to 7 p.m. on Central. Whoever writes this stuff, do you write this stuff? There's like no commas. It's just one long stream of no, you didn't write it? Okay. Mm-hmm. Anyway, she's on, of course, WCPT 820 AM, the Heartland Signal website, TuneIn, YouTube, and Facebook. I'm just not used to doing copy all the time. When you're podcasting, I can swear, say whatever I want, and not even put on pants. But here I got to change all that. Anyway, we're going to change gears here now. My blood pressure's kind of slowed down a little bit, leveled out a little bit. And my gal pal, Jennifer Weigel, the one and only Emmy Award winning, multi-talented, multifaceted, multi-best-selling author, stand-up comedian, commentator, journalist, TV. I mean, she's done it all. Here she is on WCPT. Hey, Jen.
Wait a minute. We have to wear pants?
I don't have shoes on right now, by the way. I don't have any shoes on. And it's a good thing. I'm good. How are you? Mm-hmm. I've been ranting and raving for almost 3 hours. I'm a little worked up, but I just had
yeah. You have someone there wiping your brow.
Man, I tend to get my back up on stuff like this, and so what, now what, right? It's the way I roll.
Right.
We just had Tommy Skilling on he did a whole hour. He could do like a month, and people would never get enough of the guy.
Oh my gosh, did you learn everything you need to know about barometric pressure? I love
Yeah,
that.
isobars, be damned. We did it all. And I got to tell you, I said it. Every time I talk to this guy, whether I'm at breakfast, lunch, or dinner, or on the radio, I learned something new. He is literally the walking, talking encyclopedia of meteorology.
Love it.
Great
Love
guy.
it. Everybody's got to be good at something.
That's right. And I know what you're good at. And I tell people this all the time. Let me just get a little disclaimer and disclosure up front here. I've known Weigel since our first, like it was a brunch thing, I think, at Sacred Ground, someplace in Glenview.
Blind Faith in Evanston, but kind of close. Anyway, go on.
And I had shoes on, I believe.
You did.
And I
we
remember.
were both wearing pants.
Yes, I remember.
Yes.
I lived in Michigan at the time, and I came down to have breakfast with the one and only Jennifer Weigel. I thought, oh my gosh, a couple of friends put it together. I'm like, really? And I remember bringing a little cardboard box with cassette tapes. Do you remember this?
I do. You had all the cassette tapes of your radio show up in Michigan, and I was working at WGN Radio at the time.
Yeah.
And I popped one right into the Volkswagen Scirocco as I pulled away, and had to listen and was hooked. I was hooked.
Wow.
You know what you're doing, you know?
Sometimes, even without shoes.
We've been friends ever since.
Yeah, we've been friends ever since. We've done a lot of projects, had a lot of adventures. You know, and I always tell people all the time, I say, you know, I feel, you know, just like the movie Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. You want to see me pull this one together? Mr. Smith Goes to Washington with Jimmy Stewart. And Jimmy Stewart gets launched into Washington, D.C. because somebody dies, and the governor appoints him. And, of course, it's all corruption. And he uncovers it, and he's just pounding away at the fact that, you know, men and women have to hold freedom up in front of their faces and really just make sure that they protect all that kind of stuff. And he says a line in that movie. He says, lost causes are the ones most worth fighting for. And every time I hear you do some of the work that you do with people in the work that you with your spiritual social circles and things like that, I think of how many people feel like they're a lost cause, that they don't matter, that what they think, they believe, how they see themselves in the world is just, it just doesn't matter. And I've watched you time and time and time again in so many different areas, from stages to radio to television to book signings. We've all this stuff. I watch you elevate people all the time. And I find that your most admirable skill.
Well, thank you. You know what? We are both storytellers in different ways, and our platform changes. And whether I'm on stage or sitting with you in the radio or writing a book or doing a video, we have to tell a story that inspires. I feel like that is our job. And even when the news is sludge, as you've been demonstrating for several hours and can be frustrating, what we have to see from that on the counterpoint, right, point counterpoint, is you cannot see the light without the dark. If a whole painting was just a white blob, there would be no definition and you couldn't see anything. So we have to have these grooves, these dips, these dark spots and places to really point out what we don't want. And I think what's happening right now, if I could get just a little woo-woo for a second, is building character in young adults and current adults where they will say, not on my watch. And they will do things differently because it is the wonkiest time, I know that's a technical term, the wonkiest time we have ever seen in so many ways that everybody's going, is that really a headline or did I wake up in a nightmare? And so with that, I mean, I remember back in the 80s hearing about how many billions of dollars Ronald Reagan spent on Star Wars, and it only had, I think, 73% efficacy, and it could have killed everybody.
Yeah.
But, we have to spend this just in case. And I remember sitting there in class going, why is that a good use of government money? So these things happen to create young leaders, to create new leaders, to create new leadership on the other side of it. So we have to remember that. We do.
And I have to remember that at my age, my advanced age, which isn't really that advanced, but I've been seeing, like you, I've seen so much of this stuff over the years, but this is different. Some of this stuff is familiar. It's just presented a different way. To me, it's like the same show, different characters to some greater or lesser degree. I think the height of it yesterday was when, you know, the president, who can't drive because he's a president and he can't drive on private roads, or I should say public roads, was helping sell Teslas out in front of the White House. I've never seen that before. I find that fascinating. So as he was going to bring egg prices down the first day, which hasn't happened, I was in the Jewels. You got to go to the Jewels. Yesterday I was at the Jewels, and it was like $18 for 18 dozen. That's like $1 an egg for 18 eggs. And then he wants people to buy Teslas that are between $40,000 and $80,000. I thought, well, Sean Hannity bought one, so we're covered. But when you see things that when you see things,
I was worried about his fuel efficiency. I'm so glad that's taken care of.
One of the things I didn't get to was a clip of in 2023 of President Trump and Sean Hannity talking about electronic vehicles and how horrible they were, and how people didn't want them, and how they have to drill, and get more. And now maybe it's a backlash in a good way. Like if everyone buys an EV, then we don't have to worry about oil prices anymore, right?
Again, welcome to Crazy Town.
Yeah.
As we're here, there's cocktails on the left, there's tea on the right, and we just have to figure out what is going on here, and that is what takes serious character building. Honest leadership. There's an oxymoron. But what I'm saying is
she's coming over to my side, folks. I'm dragging her over to the other side.
We have to remember when we're looking our children in the eye, and when we are saying to them what's right, quote unquote, and what's wrong, quote unquote, we have to show them the way through our behaviors. And if we get tangled in the mud too much, we can be just as disruptive if we're not progressing with our actions. Yes, we have every right to be upset. And if we're just slinging mud too, it makes for a really muddy playground. One of the great challenges, of course, is poking the bear and leaving no recourse for the bear to take action. I think, and I started out almost 3 hours ago with Rhonda Britten talking about PTSD and how there's a level of that across the board on some greater or lesser degree for people, because we're poked at constantly with stuff we can't do anything about. And I know a lot of the stuff you've worked with over the years has to do about not becoming a victim of things. And I think that is such a profound point to make, that if you become a victim of something as opposed to a participant, you can't change things as a victim, but you can as a participant. There's a difference, isn't there? Oh, for sure. And we always say in the Spiritual Social Club, observe, don't absorb. And information is power. So look, if you're telling a kid, would you just stop crying? And they're in full-blown fight or flight crying, they can't just stop crying. There are pathways that they have to change in their neurons. This is science. So there are techniques you can do to calm down and stop crying. But that's not happening now. Everyone's just in fight or flight. Rah, rah, yell, yell, scream, hit. And we have to slow down the pace so that we can get back into control. We have to get back into control. And it's doable. But that's where we all have a job to do. So don't feel helpless. Get powerful and get information so that you have a pathway forward.
I was a guest recently on one of your Zoomy thingies, which I don't do for anybody else. I'm not a Zoom fan. I
was surprised that you figured out how to turn your camera on.
I mean, come on. Great. Anyway, I'm such an audio architect. This stuff, and I always tell the people I work with when I build out their podcasts and for clients and like that, if you want me to do the video stuff, that's fine, but it isn't, meaning that I think we get distracted. Why is John wearing a hat? How come he doesn't have any shoes on? Why does Weigel's hair look like that? We get so distracted visually, we don't listen to things, so I'm all about the audio piece. But I have to say that being on with these people, the way to do it with, from around the country, basically, is a very powerful way to connect. That's the upside of that kind of technology, where you can interact with people and you don't have to go anywhere to do it, and you can get things done with them, have conversation with them. So there was an upside to it. And the Spiritual Social Club thing has become a big deal for you.
It has. Well, the pandemic 5 years ago today was the day, right, when everything was shut down. And that meant I had to go virtual. If I couldn't be live doing my events and doing my interviews, let's go. And it gave me a global outreach that I am so grateful for to this day. I had a woman on this morning from Switzerland, and we can all connect at the same heart level with the same intention to kind of better ourselves and heal in and heal. And so, and then now, of course, I can be live again, which is why I'm kind of hopping around wherever I'm invited to tell stories on stage, which, I'm hoping you can come this time, because it's about time you get to one of these.
Well, I did one of their very first ones.
You've been to my show.
Yeah, I was at one of their first ones a long time ago, and it was such an impression on me. We're going to take a quick break here in a second, but it made such an impression on me that I always tell people, as good as you are as an author, in radio, in television, coaching, all the things you do, nothing compares to seeing Weigel do her thing on stage. We'll come back after this and talk about what she has coming up next month at the Wayfarer Theater, about her one-woman show. More about that after this.
While retinitis pigmentosa takes Mark's vision, his family gives him hope, whether at the family business or at home with his wife and sons. He knows he's not fighting alone. For 50 years, the Foundation Fighting Blindness has funded research into treatments and cures for blinding retinal diseases, providing hope to people with vision loss. And for Mark, winning the fight means being there for his family. The Foundation Fighting Blindness. Together, we're winning. Help us end blinding diseases at fightingblindness.org.
Are you having trouble hearing? Hearing loss can devastate the quality of your life. Now, there's an affordable fix for you or your loved one. Rated in the best hearing aids of 2024 by USA Today, Audion Hearing has the highest quality hearing aids at the lowest prices, just $189.
I actually like them better than my old $5,000 hearing aids.
I could not believe how my hearing and life changed.
Join over 500,000 happy customers by going to audionhearing.com. That's AUDIEN hearing.com.
WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk, where facts matter.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. Filling in today for Joan, Chicago media personality, John St. Augustine.
I'm filling in for Joan, Chicago radio media personality. What do you think of that, John?
Oh, man. They got some pipes.
You know, in the old days of production, I can just imagine who's doing this, and thanks for doing it. I love, go through all the sound effects clips and making it sound jazzy behind there. All good stuff. Listen, before we get to you know what? I got about 4 more minutes with you. Can you hang for a little bit? Just 4 or 5 more minutes?
You bet. You bet. You bet.
So next month, you're going to be doing this one-woman show. And I believe this is the I'm Spiritual Damn It deal, is it not?
It is inspired storytelling of stuff you just can't make up.
You mean like the news?
Real things that happen that you go, wait, that happened? Yes, absolutely. And we're going to be at the Wayfarer Theaters. It's April 7th. It's a Monday night. This place in Highland Park is such a beautiful facility. Right there in downtown Highland Park, and I just love it. I've been doing this show now again for a year, and every time I do it on stage, there's someone in the audience that says, will you come do it at my place? And so that's how it's been going along. It's inspired storytelling of how I went from a cynical journalist to a spiritual adventurist and everything in between, doing lots of different interviews with people who have different belief systems, experiences. There's miracles, lots of miracles that you just can't explain with common sense. And now I know enough as a journalist for facts matter, because they do. It totally matters. Some things are hard to explain. Yep. Even with, I want my sources to be someone I can call on the landline, and sometimes there are dots being connected that just is out of this world. So I'll just be putting all those together in an entertaining kind of, hour, 15 minutes type of thing. So come and laugh with us at the Wayfarer on April 7th. I hope you'll be there too, John. And,
I got to say that one of the things that people will hear at that performance that they don't hear here, there's a H-E-A-R and then H-E-R-E. We're good with that? Hear? Get it?
Good with that.
Okay.
I get it.
They'll hear you talking your normal verbiage, which sometimes is very colorful, Miss Weigel.
Unbelievable. You had to help me on that when I can't even retort appropriately. No, yes. Hey, the book's called I'm Spiritual Damn It, and it became an international sensation, and you can get it on Audible now, and that's one of those things where people found me on Audible. And now this is a show that started with that premise. You can say that word, and guess what? You won't get struck by lightning, and it's going to be okay. So a lot of people come from different places with different faces, and we have to come together and find some sort of through line to get through it together. And as I was doing a lot of these interviews, many people who've died and come back, as we've talked about, you've had 2 of those, near-death experiences, when you flatline and you see big lights and you get downloads. That I'm pretty fascinated with, because people have been there and I haven't. So with that information, I put it all together and hope that people walk away a little bit smarter.
After having those 2 near-life experiences, I call them, NDEs are near-death, and I get that, but it brought me more alive than dead after that happened when I was 19 and when I was 27. And part of me thinks that I should let this stuff go more than I do. All the headlines, and I obviously remind myself and people that the headlines are not as important as the lifelines. And yet I also remind myself that my time here is finite, and I need to do the things I feel like I need to do and put voice to the things that I need to put voice to. And so that's kind of, I always tell people when they ask me about you and I, when we work together, I say we're going to the same place in different directions. We have a very different decided way to do this stuff and go about this stuff and talk about these things, but we always end up pretty much in the same space and same place. If people want to get tickets, find out more about you, buy your books, do all that stuff, how do they do it?
Go to jenweigel.com, or you can just email me at jenweigel.com, and I will tell you all the details. Also at the Wayfarer Theaters, there's an event. Just click on events, buy your tickets there.
Buy your tickets there. You sign autographs afterwards in the foyer?
I hug people, and I've got I'm Serious Damn It mugs. So
nice. Yeah. That works.
Come on.
Thanks for taking the time, my friend. It's always good to talk to you. I hope to see you soon.
Thank you, John. Always great to be with you.
All right, take care. I got to take care of a little business here before I get yelled at, and they won't let me back in the door. Time to give away a pair of tickets, apparently. Now, Lady B and I have gone over this 4 or 5 times, so if by some reason this isn't the way it's supposed to be, you got to blame her. The crazy African king of comedy will have you doubled over when Michael Blackson comes to the Genesee Theater on March 27th. If it was the 17th, he'd be in trouble, wouldn't it? Because that's the same day as Weigel's thing, I think. Blackson keeps audiences laughing with his humorous insights and everything from his relationships and life in his native homeland. Tickets are available through Ticketmaster in the Genesee Theater box office in Waukegan. What a great town. And GeneseeTheater.com. But luckily, WCPT has a pair of tickets for you. Maybe you. Or you. Turn to the left. Yeah, you over there. Maybe you. The contests are running on WCPT 820 are open to listeners 18 and older and residents of the greater and lesser Chicagoland area, Northwest Indiana area. 1 entry per person, 1 winner per household. Void where prohibited by law. I love saying that. Void where prohibited by law. Listeners may only win or qualify to win once every 30 days. Don't be calling in here if you just won 2 days ago. Complete rules are available on the website at WCPT820.com by clicking the contest tab. Caller number 4. I don't know. I just came up with that number. Caller number, is it good? Lady B, good? 4? Okay. I'm thinking of a baseball player, football player. Number 4. The number is 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. A pair of tickets to see the crazy African king of comedy, Michael Blackson, at the Genesee Theater on March 27th. Caller number 4, a pair of tickets. I'm waiting. I'm going to hold my breath till caller number 4. No. Oh, there's the caller number 1. There's caller number 2. I'm still breathing. Come on, 2 more. You're caller number 1. See ya. Caller number 2. Waiting on caller 3. There's caller 3. He's gone. Next caller. Oh, there it is. Caller number 4. There's caller number 5. Caller number 6. Too late. You got to get right on this. I guess it takes time to dial. You got that rotary phone, right? Anyway, while she's taking care of all that business, I have kind of decided for the last 7 minutes of the show to take a deep breath and walk to the lighter side of things for a while. So thanks, first and foremost, always for letting me spend a little bit of time with you during this show when I sit in for Joan or anybody else. It's always a privilege and a pleasure. And I got to say a shout out to my good friend Rich Coase, a.k.a. Sven Gulli. It's his birthday today. I'm not telling you how old Richie is, but it's his birthday today. So if you're on Facebook or if you're a Sven Gulli fan, today is his birthday. He's been at this a very long time. Listen, for people who are in the media, we all kind of know each other and we root for each other. And here's a guy that's been at this for decades. So he is one of the all-time great guys in the media. I watch him as much as I can Saturday night religiously. I'll sit and laugh at everything he does. I know how hard he works at it. The whole cast and crew is fantastic. Doug, the guy on the piano. You got Sven, I can't remember her name. There's a woman on there doing her thing. Gwen Gulli. I pulled it right out. I never mind where I pulled that out of. Gwen Gulli's on there. The Imp is on there. And, of course, Nostalgia Ferratu. Try and say that twice. And it's just a great, great time on Saturday night. But Rich is one of the really good guys of the business. And over the years, I do a lot of work with my high school Schurs. He's always donating stuff for helping us raise money for the kids and things like that. So today's his birthday. But one of the running gags for as long as I've been watching this show, it goes all the way back to the original show with Jerry G. Bishop back in the 70s. And at one time, it was called Screaming Yellow Theater. And there was just a billboard card up that said Screaming Yellow Theater on the TV, on WFLD, I believe, or 26, one of the two. And we would sit there and just watch this. You didn't even see Jerry G right away. And then he became Sven Gulli with all his, kind of goofy costumes and things like that. And the running gag, though, is Berwyn, Illinois. Berwyn, and I don't know why that is. And I'm going to connect the two right now in case you're a Sven Gulli fan. You didn't know where Berwyn comes from. I texted Rich this morning. I said, hey, what's the deal here? And he said, well, here's a couple things. When the original Sven, Jerry G. Bishop, started his show, Rowan and Martin and Johnny Carson were making small-town jokes about Burbank, California. And back when he was in Cleveland, Ernie Anderson, doing his Ghoulardi show, made similar jokes about a suburb, Parma, outside of Cleveland. So Jerry G. wanted to do the same thing, and he chose Berwyn for a few reasons, including that Berwyn had a yearly parade in honor of mushrooms. The rest, they say, is history. And the folks at Berwyn have always been so kind to Jerry G., the original Jerry, and, of course, Rich, and appreciate the mentions of this gentle fun that we poke with him. So you'll never know, at some point during the Sven Gulli show, you'll hear Berwyn. That's where it all comes from. Oh, wait. Here comes the boss in here. You going to grab a mic? Look at this. This is a first. Hurry up. We're running out of time, Chief.
Hey,
What's going on?
I live in Berwyn. I've been to the Mushroom Parade. It's called the Hoobie Festival with Berwyn and Cicero.
No, this does not surprise me about you.
It's fantastic.
And what, like mushrooms and...
It's the original Czech settlers from Berwyn grew mushrooms in their basement.
Lady B, do you see him come running in here? I know all about it. I live in Berwyn. So here's the next thing. Have you been to the Berwyn Chicken Company?
No.
You need to go.
Yes. Yeah,
you
they're
need
on Roosevelt.
7021 Roosevelt Road. I was going to give them a shout out because it's Berwyn. I was there a couple weeks ago, and the chicken sandwiches are roughly the size of a snapping turtle. You can get 3 meals out of the thing. I've never tasted anything so good. And the tater tots, Sparky, were fantastic. So you got to get over there.
It used to be the Big Guy Sausage.
Correct.
In the same place.
No,
it was fantastic
the
too,
Big Guy's sausage. You got to say sausage. Yeah. So shout out to the Berwyn Chicken Company if you get a chance. They don't even know I'm endorsing them, but the food was fantastic. Is that all right? I just okay. Thank. Well, you live there. You got to.
You're not getting paid for it.
No, I want to get a free sandwich. They don't even know who I am, but it was fantastic. And so, yeah, you got to get over there. Since you're a Berwynite, is that what they call you?
Berwynner.
I highly doubt that.
Ich bin ein Berwynner.
Give the man his own show. You don't want to be a donut?
No.
All right. Last thing, I got to give a shout out to the Donkey Inn out on Plum Grove Road in Palatine. Best cheeseburgers in the Chicagoland area. Randy Hunley and I, the former Chicago Cub great, we used to work on our book out there, and that's where we would have lunch. So if you stop in there and say you want to ask for Roxanne, tell you want one of the best cheeseburgers in Chicago, she'll set you up. The place was built in 1932. They actually used to house donkeys in there, hence the name Donkey Inn. Donkeys were in, you know what I mean? In the inn?
Yeah.
I-N-I-N-N, Matt? Okay. I don't think he's ever going to let me in here again. Great to be with you all today. Lady B, thanks so much working with you. And Sparky, I'll see you soon. Until next time, no matter what the headlines say, remember that lifelines are more important. Keep the faith.
This is a WCPT Veteran Minute. In the midst of World War II, a group of Native American soldiers known as the Code Talkers became silent heroes. The U.S. military faced challenge of secure communications on the battlefield, and these men, primarily from the Navajo tribe, were enlisted to develop an unbreakable code. Using their native language, which had no written alphabet, they transmitted vital messages that were indecipherable to enemy forces. The code proved to be an essential asset, particularly in the Pacific theater.